Everybody to today's meeting of the Board of Commissioners for LA Department of Water and Power. I want to welcome everybody here, particularly our special guests from Inyo County. Welcome and thank you for being here. And we look forward to hearing from you shortly. But again, very much appreciate your making the trek and being here. Thank you. Shall we start with the roll call?
The meeting is being broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. Board of Water and Power Commissioners, please say present for roll call. Commissioner NURIT KATZ.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Present.
President KATZ.
Present.
Vice President MCGRAW.
Present.
Commissioner PINDER.
Present.
5 board members. A quorum is present, Mr. President.
Thank you. Item B, the election of officers. We're going to defer to our meeting on the 23rd of July. Anybody planning a coup has 2 more weeks. Again, as I said earlier, I want to welcome our special guests for an unprecedented meeting and looking forward to the presentation from tribal leadership from Inyo County. As everyone knows, LA has a fraught history with Inyo County, but we're looking at today as a step forward in long-term relationships, and very much excited and very appreciative of the leaderships taking the time to be with us today and continuing the work that George MCGRAW, who has our relations committee, and DWP staff have done over months and years. And we will hear from tribal representatives in a few minutes. I want to welcome everybody else here today. We will be having a meeting, or some discussion whether we would be having a meeting on the 23rd of July or not. We are. That'll partially enable us to get through today's agenda also. But so far, it's been a good summer from a DWP perspective, and very pleased with how the system and how all the great men and women who work here have responded to the last couple of weeks of challenges. I noted 2 or 3 times now that Northern California ISO has gone into emergency situations on Friday afternoons for power reasons or lack thereof. We've not had that problem. And it's a tribute to the great women and men who work in this department and the leadership from the city. And so we're very grateful for that. So any remarks by commissioners? Okay.
Not at this time.
Public comment?
Public comment is now open at this time. We have approximately 16 public commenters and 56 e-comments. All e-comments were transmitted to each commissioner at the dais, and they will be made available to public if necessary. The first public commenter will be Max Bracey. Public commenters, please be mindful that you will have 2 minutes to speak. Max Bracey. The next speaker will be Mark Dyer after Mr. Bracey.
Hello?
It's live.
My name is Max Bracey, and I am a representative of the environmental nonprofit Heal the Bay. We appreciate the opportunity to provide public comment to ask the LADWP, thank you, Board of Commissioners to weave meaningful engagement with tribes into its standard operating procedures. This past weekend, I had the privilege of hiking to the summit of Tumaniguya, also known as Mount Whitney, and driving through the region, I couldn't help but reflect on the environmental inequities exacted on the Paiute. There is a moral obligation of the commissioners to settle past land and water injustices. Tribes should have the direct access to the Board of Commissioners to address the ecological conditions of the valley and the importance of commitment to nature-based solutions. We ask that LADWP prioritize local water and leave more or all of the water in Payahuandu or Owens Valley, rectifying ecosystem and environmental injustice harms created by the Los Angeles Aqueduct. And LA should really push for more water independence and as a solution with stormwater capture and wastewater recycling systems. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the comment.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mark Dyer, who will be followed by Connor Evans.
Good morning. My name is Mark Dyer. I'm with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I'd like to bring to your attention that we have a significant investment here in Los Angeles in SRO properties and much older buildings, about 13 of them. And we have applied for upgrades to a number of buildings and temporary power for the buildings because we have over 300 rooms available to place homeless and low-income people into. And the process to get that reviewed and approved is extensive, and we're looking to do like expediting that and getting DWP to move a little quicker. We were just notified the other day for our Barclay property that we will not have power to that building or upgraded power until January of 2027, which is 2.5 years. And 2.5 years, we could have 150 people in that building. And then we have a new project, Angel Tower on 9th Street, that's going to be an adaptive reuse building with 242 units that we also need to upgrade the power to. And we just received approval after 2 years for our King Edward Hotel property to upgrade that power, and that is being brought into the street in the next couple of weeks, and that will be upgraded as well. But I just think we need to take a serious look at that and try to expedite this process in order for us to be able to house the homeless individuals and low-income people in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
The next speaker is Connor Evans, who will be followed by Andreas Gonzalez.
Guess that's as high as it goes. Connor Everett, Southern California Watershed Alliance, Statewide Environmental Water Caucus, and for the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water. I'm happy to be here for the presentation from Inyo County. I was fortunate enough to, you got it? Oh, okay, even Mark. And I was fortunate enough to go out with Mike Prather and be on the edges of the lake where with water from the hurricane and the 2 wet winters, we saw what restoration could really look like with the return of the birds on their way to Mono Lake and brine shrimp as well. But I'm really here to listen to the tribes. We're fortunate to have them at Green LA Water Committee on Thursday as well, giving a presentation. So I hope this is the beginning of a new relationship with a new board and a new day in water. Thank you very much. And I hope we go beyond the state water board's weak water conservation guidelines that just came out. Martha Davis and others, a triumvirate of great women, Tracy Quinn, and Heather Cooley from the Pacific Institute all work to make that stronger. To push those deadlines out like Sigma to 2040 does us all a disservice. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Connor.
The next speaker is Andreas Gonzalez, who will be followed by Ann Kaneko.
Perfect. How you doing, Honorable Commission? My name is Andres Gonzalez, speaking on unceded Tongva lands, as well as a member of Council District 1 and an LADWP ratepayer. For generations, we have developed systems of extraction from Payahunadu, excuse my mispronunciation, also known as Owens Valley. Today, we have representatives from the Owen Valley Indian Water Commission, many who have driven almost 5 hours just to be here, who have attended this commission to meet in good faith. Honorable Commission, you have an opportunity today to right wrongs from past generations, and I strongly encourage the Commission to establish relations with the Owen Valley Indian Water Commission outside of this public comment space to increase access and return water and land rights to tribal communities and center their vision in reestablishing relationships with the water, land, and place that we all share in. We are facing a climate crisis of immense impact, and this is an opportunity where we can right the wrongs of past generations. I thank you and encourage you to do the honorable thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Ann Kaneko, who will be followed by Lauren Kelly.
Hi, my name is Ann Kaneko. I'm a third-generation LA resident. My grandparents immigrated here. My father was born here, and I was born here. I made the film Manzanar Diverted, When Water Becomes Dust, which looks at the impacts of Native Americans who were forced out of Payahunadu Japanese Americans, like my own family, who were forced to concentration camps across the country, like Manzanar, which was on DWP lands, as well as ranchers who were also forced to sell out to DWP for the extraction of this water. I want to really take this day to rethink the injustices that have occurred with Los Angeles and the folks of Payahunadu. It really behooves us to make good on the broken promises. This week is really important since it also commemorates on July 11th, the anniversary of the forced march from Payahunadu to Fort Tejon. This was when all of the Native Americans were forced to Fort Tejon on an arduous and cruel a journey. And this really represents so many broken promises of this country as well as of the city in terms of extracting water from this valley, we are all connected. And just as my own family, which was forced to concentration camps, we share this history of forced removal. Thank you, and I hope this begins a new chapter for Los Angeles.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Lauren Kelly, who will be followed by Robert Leland.
Hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity to give public comment. My name is Lauren. I am water justice organizer with Friends of the Inyo from up in Payahunadu, and I'm also a history PhD candidate here at USC. And I'm here today in support as well of the presentation on tribal land and water history. And I'd also like to say, I think a lot of people here are urging us to focus on local water, and that DWP is taking steps forward. We're going to hear about Operation Next today. But one thing that we've really seen so far in this water justice work is that DWP has stated that it has no plans to reduce extraction from Payahunadu, along with it increasing its local water resources. So for the sake of the indigenous residents of Payahunadu, and for the other residents of Payahunadu, we really urge that LADWP seriously consider our ask to not only increase these local water resources here in the LA region, but also to make concrete plans to reduce extraction of water from Payahunadu itself. In terms of the presentation that we're going to hear later today from Director Red Owl, I really urge the committee to, I'm glad that she's finally having a chance to speak, but I really urge the committee to, or the commission, excuse me, to engage in a longer dialogue to reopen negotiations over tribal water rights in Payahunadu and to create the collaborative management strategy that the commission talked about in their biodiversity and nature-based solutions statement. That I think was somewhat aspirational, and we would really like to see the reality catch up with the laudable words and view in that statement. So I'll end it there, but thank you so much.
And I have no doubt that you'll be able to defend that PhD when it comes to that phase. Thank you
so much. I appreciate that, Commissioner Pinder.
The next speaker is Robert Leland, who will be followed by Joseph Martinez.
I would prefer to speak after the tribal presentation, but I guess I don't have an option. Please extend the deadline for the written record. We need more, not less input. The biodiversity, access to nature, and nature-based solutions motion seems too little, too late. LADWP ought to strive for 100% renewable energy from rooftop solar, while eschewing so-called solar and wind farms. These, in quote, farms destroy natural carbon sinks and wildlife habitats, exacerbating the sixth mass extinction. LADWP should not depend on imported water. To achieve these goals, we need to practice and enforce mandatory conservation. We also need to face the fact that LA exceeded its carrying capacity long ago. Let's ration water, use waterless toilets, ban private swimming pools, discourage non-native gardening. Put power lines below ground and allow trees to grow above ground. Trees sequester carbon dioxide, provide shade, and cool the LA heat island. We need legislation to protect trees, permitting only necessary pruning by certified arborists. Your board can right a historical wrong that, in my opinion, was motivated by racism. I say this as a white man. If you extend the written record, I'll submit additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Joseph Martinez, who will be followed by Annie Mendoza.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joseph Martinez. I'm here on behalf of the office of Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez, but most importantly on behalf of the constituency and Council District 7. Today, the board is going to be looking into an item, which is item number 9, the recommended by water system. I could speak about the importance of this stormwater project, but I want to talk about the significance in terms of its location, the David M. Gonzalez. David M. Gonzalez is a park in the heart of Pacoima, northeast San Fernando Valley. It is adjacent to one of the largest projects, housing projects in our community, 1,500 people who reside there. I could talk about the infrastructure project and the benefits of the stormwater project, but I want to talk about its location. It benefits the community. As you all know, some communities don't have all the resources, and some of them fight for it all the time. The board has an opportunity to work with us, to work with our community in partnership. Everybody talks about relationship. Well, relationship's a two-way stream. And I come here. Yes, I made the drive. Yes, you could say it's my job, but no, I speak for the many voices of our constituency. The stormwater project is important, not only for the preservation of what it's going to do for our water, but what it's going to do for our infrastructure. We're talking about the renovations of some of the playgrounds, where some of these kids don't have backyards. That is their backyard. We want to do a partnership with DWP, and that partnership is relationship-based. Yes, it's a stormwater project. Yes, it's going to help us with the water, but more importantly, it's going to help us not only in our facility, but for our residency. So I encourage you to please support it. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
The next speaker will be Annie Mendoza, who will be followed by Kendall Noah.
Biha Nahinkam Koinekiam Natwaniane Annie Mendoza. Pavetnaha Tongvetnaha. Hello, Board of Commissioners. Thank you for the public comment space today. My name is Annie Mendoza. I'm a Tongva community member, so that means my family, generations of my family helped shape and mold the city of Los Angeles before it even existed. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Urban Planning at UCLA, and I study the flow and control of water, and nobody has more control and power than the DWP. I'm here today as an ally to the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission, folks that have been my first teachers in understanding where our water comes from and how our usage impacts people, indigenous people from all over the local area. I'm here today with the skeptical heart because I understand history and understand the history of this institution that has referred to Native people as the Indian problem. I'm here to support the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission's ask for collaborative management strategies. I hope that you are here to deeply listen to what they have to say. As a Tongva community member, as a ratepayer, as somebody that deeply cares about the future of water in my homeland, I ask that you create a permanent, tribally elected board position, because we need that. We need the voice of water to be here at a constant, not just presentations once in a while when you want to pull us out, but we need permanent representation for tribal folks and for also the water itself. And that's what we offer here. We have an aqueduct that we share between us, but Tongva people and Paiute people also share a lot of values, which is relationship, reciprocity, all the R's, respect, and we need that to be in the halls of this place, the place that controls the future of our water. When I started doing this work in 2016, 2017, the LA Aqueduct was only being used for 29% of the water. And in the recent report that was released in 2023 by the DWP, we are now at 38% of water usage from the LA Aqueduct. So I hope that this sustainability plan or the management plan that you have will address the significant usage that we are using right now. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. I can assure you, ma'am, that none of us label any people as problems. We've all at some point in our lives likely been called problems ourselves. So your words were well heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Kendall Noah, who will be followed by Alexis Red Owl.
Halato, Achukma, Suachapa, Kendall Noah, Chetasihoke. Greetings, I hope you're all well. My name is Kendall Noah. I'm a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I really want to thank you for allowing us to have this space to make general comments. I just wanted to say how I wholeheartedly support the presentation that Terry Red Owl is going to give today. I live on the Bishop Reservation, home of the original people, the Numu people, and I really hope that you really critically reflect everything that she hopes that she's going to say today. I think there's going to be a history that she's going to be talking about the moral obligation that Los Angeles DWP has to the indigenous people in our valley. Right now, our people are just surviving. We want to thrive, just like Los Angeles is doing. And I think that by working together, we could find collaborative strategies to really work together to solve these kind of issues that we're having with our people, these social issues that our tribes are going through. So I really hope you really listen to her, what she has to say, because I wholeheartedly support everything that she's going to be saying today. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Alexis Red Owl, who will be followed by Isabella Red Owl.
Manahu Anani Ine Alexis Red Owl. Hello, my name is Alexis Red Owl. I come from Paihunadu where the water flows. It is one of my dreams that one day LADWP negotiates and works with our tribes so that together we can settle the issues of land and water to ensure a thriving future for us all. Thank you.
The next speaker is Isabella Red Owl, who will be followed by Adam Resnick.
Manahu and Nani Ine Isabella Red Owl. Hello, my name is Isabella Red Owl. I come from Paihunadu, a place we call the land where the water always flows. Sadly, for over a century, this water has been diverted 250 miles south to Los Angeles. In my 18 years, I have witnessed the continuing damage to our lands my ancestors hunted, fished, and nurtured since time immemorial. Today, I ask Los Angeles to honor its moral obligation and work towards solutions that support the original people of Paihunadu. Together, we can settle the issue of land and water to ensure a thriving future for us all. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Adam Resnick, who will be followed by Bruce Resnick.
Hey, my name is Adam Resnick. I'm a LADWP ratepayer from Silver Lake. And I was here to say that I think the best way for the DWP to implement their kind of aspirational biodiversity initiative would be to work with the tribes of Paihunadu or the Owens Valley and establish a good faith, meaningful, official working relationship with them, and to establish kind of a co-management plan for those lands and to increase the ecological health and function of those lands. And I would hope that part of that also is extracting less water from that valley and releasing culturally sensitive lands and water back to the tribes as a part of the good faith, establishment of good faith. And so I just really would urge the LADWP to establish a real relationship with the tribes, a meaningful relationship, and to listen to what they have to say and to work to solve those problems with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be Bruce Resnick, who will be followed by Ashok Talukdar.
Good morning, everybody. Chair KATZ, members of the commission, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Bruce Resnick. I'm the executive director of Los Angeles Waterkeeper, and I must admit, I'm a little embarrassed to say in my years here, this is my first LADWP commission hearing. It will not be my last, and so you'll probably get tired of seeing me eventually, but it is my first, and really, I want to thank you for this entire agenda. all these items that we're looking at today, and they're all interconnected, by the way, from the presentation from indigenous water use, tribal water use, to what is happening with Operation X with local water, to the LA River, and even the Safe Clean Water Program votes. It is all connected. And so I want to thank, first of all, thank you for the presentation that you're going to hear from the Owens Valley tribes. I know this is the first time in a very, very long time. This is critical, just as this is my first of what will be many times participating in this hearing. This needs to be your first engagement and from a hearing. You need to continue this as a meaningful dialogue as we figure out ways that we reduce our imported water. And so we are able to give water back and land back to the tribes from where that water comes from. I think the last thing I want to say is we are here, when I say LA Waterkeeper, and I think the broader community, as allies. We need a new mantra for LADWP and LA in general, which is here it is, use it. We have our water and our groundwater that needs to be cleaned up. We have water that we can capture from stormwater capture through Safe Clean Water, recycling the 500 million gallons away of wastewater. We need to make progress on that. And once we do that, and actually are capturing that stormwater, we can fully restore the LA River and the frontline communities along the LA River. We can give back water not only to the Owens Valley tribes, but along the Colorado, the Bay Delta, and we can have a more sustainable, equitable, resilient future for LA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce.
The next speaker is Ashok Talukdar, who will be followed by Michelle Zamora.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ashok Talukdar. I am here on behalf of AIDS Healthcare Foundation. You've heard from my colleague Mark Dyer, and I cannot emphasize enough the significance of the issues that he's raised. I say to you that every vacant unit in every single SRO in this city is an opportunity to save an Angelino who is in the street 15 floors below us. I do have to shout out to LADWP because we have received very good cooperation from you, especially from your customer station designs team. But we all have the capacity to make a difference. But you, the commissioners, and the city, you have the capacity to remove the obstacles from the way of people who are trying to make the difference. And every obstacle you remove is a life saved. So my request to you is, and our request to you is, that the next time the opportunity presents itself to exercise that power and that authority, we hope you will do it with heart and with mind, because it is not a hyperbole when I say that there are lives depending on it. And people will thank you, as I thank you.
The next speaker will be Michelle Zamora, who will be followed by Maritza Alvarez.
Good day, LADWP Board of Commissioners. Thank you very much for making this space available. My name's Michelle Zamora. I'm a PhD candidate at UC Santa Barbara. Thank you. For the last 9 years, I've really been deep diving into just sustainabilities in Los Angeles. I'm a resident here on unceded Tongva land, UCSB being on unceded Chumash land. And one of the most significant findings of my research is just how impactful street-level bureaucrats are on engaging community stakeholders and their ability to actually show up and want to show up, feel valued and heard. So I'm here today to greatly urge you to take your positions seriously as ultimate policymakers and to engage tribal folks in an honest and just way. As Annie had mentioned earlier, having a tribal seat here is the most formidable thing that you can do, and it's absolutely necessary. Because of the long and violent history of LADWP with tribal water stakeholders, implementation of sustainable policy is really inhibited, but you have the opportunity right now to make those changes, and that's what is on your plate. So making honest collaborations with the tribal folks also helps to create just, equitable, sustainable policy for all of the residents here. Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Maritza Alvarez, who will be followed by Kaylee Way. She's got it.
Thank you. Greetings. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. My name is Maritza Alvarez. I'm with Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples. We're a California-found, indigenous-led and found environmental justice organization helping to protect indigenous lands and waters. And we are located here on Tongva unceded territories. I want to thank everyone here for being open to listen and to be able to take these matters serious and evolve into another level of true engagement with the Payahanadu nations. You've heard everyone talk about the importance of engagement, and I think that that's a very important first step. But the, I think, most important step is ensuring, as Annie mentioned, to have a permanent representation here at the table at all times of some representatives from the Payahanadu Nation speaking on behalf of their waters, given the history of how that occurred. And if you all truly are into wanting to make that honest and shift in engaging and collaboration, then that would be a really important shift that I think all of you would be proud of. I think also that it's important that we keep in mind that they should have access, the Payahanadu Nation should have access to their waters and their lands to continue their cultural traditions that have kept all of these lands and waters in balance. And so it's really important that you also consider those asks. I'm also hoping that that the collaboration continues on all levels, not just having a seat here on this commission, but throughout the entire process. And I also want to thank the Payahanadu nations, because I myself have been a beneficiary of these waters, and I apologize for all the injustices that have occurred as a result. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Kaylee Way, who will be followed by Jocelyn Real?
Hi, you hear me? Yeah, okay. I'm going to read from my phone so I don't forget anything. But my name is Kaylee Wade. I'm the Senior Manager of Inland Outreach with Heal the Bay. I'm here to show support for Terry Redow's presentation and to stand with my friends from the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission and to ask the LEDWP Board of Commissioners to have intentional engagement with tribes in standard procedures and to truly localize water through measures such as capturing stormwater, and to also echo the need for a permanent tribal board position. I actually had the privilege of visiting Payahanadu and Patsiata recently through the Walking Water Collective and in collaboration with the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission. I'm grateful and privileged to be here standing alongside everybody from there. Having been born and raised on Tongva land, I've lived here my whole life. I'm probably not leaving. I also did not know like the painful history that that LA has with water. So it added further context to that, and I'm very privileged to having learned that to help strengthen my own work in water advocacy. So yeah, learning about the long, painful history served as a further reminder that we actually do need to mend our extractive and colonial relationship with water and to instead really focus on giving land and water back. And just like as a quick side note too, we got to see Patsiata or Owens Lake. And when we saw it, there was actually water in it. And for people that might not know, when LA started using Patsiata for water, the lake was drained within a couple of decades. So seeing water in it was a joy, and it was like it was crazy, right? But also elders told us that that's the most water that they had ever seen in Patsiata ever. And to add to that more, it was only at 6% capacity. So I think that's a really big reflection of how important I think it is to really pay attention to Terry Redowell's presentation and to really pay attention to these asks and to adopt them to make, to really mend that relationship. And yeah, just to be better. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I ask, unless someone has a medical reason for standing up, would they please sit down? For me, it's a distraction.
Sorry, I can't sit.
Yeah, I said, unless you have a medical reason, please, everybody else sit down. Thank you.
Speaker, would you please state your last name, first and last name?
Yeah, my name is Jocelyn Del Real. Yeah, can I start my
Please
comment?
proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Jocelyn Del Real. I'm here with East York Communities for Environmental Justice. And I'm here in solidarity with the tribes in Payahunadu land. It is shameful that LADWP has not done enough to address the harmful legacy of extraction and injustice in these communities. As someone who lives here on Tongva land and benefits from these waters, it's disheartening to learn where it comes from, right? And that 30% of this water is taken from these lands, right, with no consideration or negotiation with local tribes. These tribes should be given direct access to LADWP to voice their concerns and demands beyond these 10-minute presentations. LADWP cannot keep operating like this. There needs to be more accountability and meaningful engagement on how to address these harms that this municipality has done for generations. And by that, I mean, ensuring healthy ecological conditions in these lands and incorporating land back, right? And management models that centers the tribe's self-determination. And a good way to start that, right, is, one of the ways to start that is to have a seat at the table for, for the tribes, right? Because the communities of Payahunadu deserve to be heard and they deserve answers. And most importantly, they deserve change from this municipality. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is the last speaker. It's Cindy D. I can't pronounce the last name. Would you please state your last name as it's listed?
Donis.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cindy Donis. I'm an organizer and member with East York Communities for Environmental Justice. I live here on Tongva territory, so-called Los Angeles. And I'm here in support of the water, of indigenous tribes, and life in Payahunadu. It is important that LADWP engage in meaningful conversations with tribes and actually start a process of water and land back to help create the strategies also to ensure that ecological life is not just sustained, but is supported enough to thrive. I hope this can develop into a genuine relationship building. Specifically, what that can look like is that the tribes be given direct access to full LADWP Board of Commissioners and, like mentioned earlier by Annie Mendoza, a permanent seat at the table. While you individually and I individually didn't create these colonial issues and harms, it is our collective duty to amend and prevent future harms to be committed. This can be the healthy start if you choose it to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment is now closed at this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Before we move to our Chief Engineer and CEO report, let me just announce that items 04, 8, 9, and 10 are going to be deferred to our meeting on the 23rd of July. Okay. 4, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. Howdy.
Hi. Well, good morning and welcome to Owens Valley Indian Water Commission. Terry, I'm really looking forward to your presentation today. I enjoyed it last time I was up there in the Owens Valley with you, so I'm looking forward to sharing that information with our public here today. From an update, I just want to say amazing job this weekend by our crews. I want to thank Walter, David, the ECC leadership, Simon, your team. If you look at how other systems fared in the state in California, I think the most customers that we saw was about 49, where others were in the thousands of customers out during the heat wave. That speaks to what we spoke last time in the meeting, our preparation for summer readiness and how the system fared, but also our crews being positioned where they needed to be for restoration and the proactive replacement program that we have with our transformers. So thanks to the team, all our linemen and everybody that contributed to an exceptional performance this weekend. I also want to acknowledge our new Chief Administrative Officer. We appointed John Smith, a city veteran of 35 years, 25 with the department. John has led our fleet and aviation organization for a long time. He also led the facilities organization. He'll be responsible for facilities, fleet, corporate security, real estate, and sourcing. It's a huge role for the department, but one that's very much needed, and it's going to give us some support on the joint system. Release a lot of pressure from our CEO here so he can deal with the summer readiness issues. Next update is our scholarship awards. We had this is the 5th year we give scholarship to Inyo County students. It's about $5,000. We did that for career and technical education, really in jobs as like welding, information technology, technical engineering, and many more. Those jobs are jobs that we need in the department. So this scholarships really bring in full circle what we do. We give it back to the community, and then we are able to offer jobs, well-paying jobs that help with our community improvements. And then Olympic Games updates. I think we have the Games Council established. We had our first meeting. We're getting ready for 2028 Olympics and Paralympic Games, but we must not forget we have other big sporting events coming into the city. So we have the World Cup, we have the NBA All-Star Game, we also have Super Bowl and the Olympic Games. So all of this preparation that we have in our infrastructure and managing all of our partners in the region, it's going to take us through those games that are going to not one, prep us, but also test us to be ready for the 2028 Olympics. And lastly, I was appointed to the board of directors for the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. They had a beautiful reception for me last week or 2 weeks ago, and I was able to talk to the president and CEO of the chamber, Maria Salinas, about how we can partner as a department to support our business communities at large. So that's what I have for you, President KATZ.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the upbeat nature of the report, too, considering all the challenges that are out there. Yeah. But great job. Where is, oh, there you are, Dr. Pickles. Ratepayer advocate.
I will have comments on other items if they are raised in the discussion. We have a new report on items 8, 9, and 10 now deferred. And then news on the Office of Public Accountability Ratepayer Advocate Executive Director search. Last week, the Citizen Selection Committee that was appointed to find and appoint a replacement for me selected a headhunting firm, Korn Ferry. They expect to be under contract by the end of this month, and they expect to do their search in a 90-day period, and then allowing for a 30-day period for the city approval process. It'll be between 90 and 120 days before my replacement's in place.
So we will see you at least for that amount of time.
Depends.
We're going to talk about it. All right, how's that?
Dr. Pickle, I just want to say we really appreciate you extending your service. You've certainly earned, retirement or moving on to other things, and we appreciate that you've stayed longer based on the city's need to find a replacement.
And we're working on a replacement, a model downstairs with the engineers so that we get the same brain power.
You know, it was the team, not the individual.
That's it for now?
Well, you'll note that Camden Collins is not here. She's begun her permanent vacation.
Oh.
It's already happening. All right. Thank you for that, and wish her our very best, please.
I will.
Thank you. Let's see. We have the block vote items. Is that up for you?
Yes.
Yeah. And Shante, what items are on that?
We believe that we need to have Commissioner Pinder recuse herself for items 02 and item 03. Therefore, the remaining items are items 1, 5, 6, and 7 from section O.
Motion to approve items 1, 5, 6, and 7.
A motion and a second. Without objection, all members present being recorded as aye votes, except for Commissioner Pinder, where noted by the Secretary. Such shall be the order.
She doesn't need to recuse herself at this time. It'll be later, so she can vote.
On the others.
Yeah.
They call 3.
So no objections here. Anyone else?
5 ayes, motion adopted to approve items 1, 5, 6, and 7.
That's it.
Okay.
All right.
Commissioner Pinder,
Okay.
would you like to take those items now, the recusal items?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Motion to approve items 2 and 3.
Second.
Without objection, all members present, noting Commissioner Pinder's absence as appropriate.
4 ayes, motion adopted.
You can come back now. All right, management reports. George, I'll turn to you and let you start off.
Yeah, I'd love to. This is what we're all here for today, among other things. But I'd love to welcome up to the dais the water system to introduce Terry Reddell, the executive director of the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission, who's going to do a special presentation for us on tribal water history and our relationship with the department in the Owens Valley and Payahunadu. We'll be doing this one a little bit differently. It's unusual for us to invite outside groups to speak to us on agendized items, but the water system very graciously ceded their time for this, so we appreciate that. We'll hear the presentation in lieu of questions, which we typically do after a management presentation. We'll be presenting a statement from the board, and then we'll briefly pause the meeting to allow folks who came all the way down from Payahunadu to start the journey back, so that they're not stuck here for the rest of the day with all of you. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, Terry.
I'll go ahead and just give a brief kind of intro, and then I'll hand it over to Terry. So good morning, everybody. Adam Perez. I'm the manager of the Aqueduct. I'm also the assistant director of water operations under Mr. Milat Tagavi in the water operations division. I'm here to introduce our very special guest, Ms. Terry Reddell, the executive director of the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission, to give a presentation on tribal water and land history in the Owens Valley. Ms. Reddell represents 3 tribes of the Owens Valley. They are the Bishop Paiute tribe, the Big Pine Paiute tribe, as well as the Lone Pine Paiute Shoshone tribe. That being said, the DWP City of Los Angeles is committed to working closely with all the tribes of the Owens Valley, as well as the tribes of Mono Basin and also here in the Los Angeles Basin. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ms. Reddell.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Honorable commissioners, my name is Terry Reddell, and I'm the executive director of the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission. I've worked for the Water Commission for almost 30 years, advocating for land and for water, for our people, for the plants, the animals. I'm an enrolled member of the Bishop Paiute tribe, and I just, first of all, want to start off by thanking you for giving us the time today on the agenda. We have a great new leadership that I'm very appreciative to be working with, not only at the DWP level, but also City Hall and the mayor's office. I think we have an opportunity to move forward some of these longstanding issues that started back in the early 1900s. The title today is Payahunadu Water Rights. I know it's on the agenda as land and water history. We don't have time to get into the deep history that we have, but some of the commissioners, including Commissioner MCGRAW and Commissioner NURIT KATZ, and as well as the CEO, Janice Quiones, and others, have seen our history presentation, and I'm hoping to have that opportunity to share with some of the other commissioners. I also want to say it's great to meet and see in person Commissioner PINDER and LEHRER. I haven't had the opportunity to meet you yet. And I also want to thank all of the people, the supporters that are here today, standing in solidarity with us. I think this is a good sample and indication of how a lot of the folks down here that are voters and ratepayers and citizens feel and support the work that we're doing up there and the things that we're trying to accomplish. And so really today, what I'm going to focus on, rather than the history, like I said, we don't have a lot of time to dive into that, is just talk a little bit about our water rights and our negotiations that initially took place in the 1990s that unfortunately at that time we didn't have the same mindsets that we have today to be able to settle those claims in water rights negotiations. And I also am neglectful to say that I was charged with extending a welcome from our tribal leaders that weren't able to be here today. Many of them had planned on being at the June meeting, and that got pushed back. But they have indicated that they're hoping that they'll be able to attend a future meeting and meet you folks in person, and look forward to having you come up and visit us more often and continuing with these discussions and dialogues. Okay?
Yep.
I'll see.
Yep.
Okay. So this is just a nice picture that I like to share when I begin my presentations. And we call our homelands Payahunadu, land of the flowing water, or the place where the water always flows. Most people know it as Owens Valley or Eastern Sierra, California, but this is what I get to look at on a good winter year when we have, snow in the mountains. It's a beautiful place. There's a really delicate balance that at times is often upset with the way that water is managed and extracted up there. And I think that's some future discussions that we want to have as ideas for continued collaboration with the tribes in using our traditional knowledge that we have and being able to implement some of that on the lands. But I just would like to share that. And just a little bit of background about the Water Commission, as Mr. Perez said, we're a tribal consortium representing 3 tribes in the Owens Valley. We were established in 1990, and really it was to work on the tribe's water rights. That's what we started with, and to advocate for land, for environmental protection, to educate our kids and help them to continue our culture, and really to try to create better homelands for our people, not just, where we're surviving on the daily, but being able to thrive as a community that we once were able to do. And then the other thing that we do at our office is we provide food sovereignty and food security services to our tribe and agriculture support, because, if there's nothing that we learned about during COVID, the number one thing was food, and where we're located, 5 hours from here, we were having to compete at the grocery stores with people that were driving up from the Southlands when they knew trucks were being delivered, and purchasing groceries before our tribal elders could get there. So we got really serious about being able to grow food and produce our food locally. And just in a nutshell, I'm here today, and your supporters are here today, is to request that Los Angeles, and not just LADWP, because we know the authority also comes from the city council, but you guys re-engage in negotiations with the tribes to settle our outstanding water rights claims. And these are the claims that are associated with the 1939 land exchange, where the federal government traded lands with the city of Los Angeles that essentially created the 3 reservations that the Bishop, Big Pine, and Lone Pine tribes currently reside on. And when the land exchange took place, the water rights were supposed to have been exchanged. That didn't happen. And so that's really what I'm focusing on today. There are other water claims and ways that we were using water that I'm not going to dig deep in today, but simply I'm mostly focusing on the land exchange. And this is a picture that's really near and dear to my heart that our sister Annie Mendoza, who spoke earlier, produced, her and her artist friends, when she created the film Aqueduct Between Us. And we're connected through water with the Tongva tribe down here, the Tatiavam tribe, as well as our tribes up there in our homelands. And we're very land poor. And I'll show a little bit about that today. But really, when people ask, a lot of times they're like, why are you guys like fighting over, one house on your reservation? Or why are you guys on these little reservations when we go up and we see all this open space? And really, it's all action, such a large history of getting water to Los Angeles, which has displaced us from our homelands. And I know Commissioner Pinder, when one of the speakers talked about the Indian problem, and you said, we aren't an Indian problem to you. In the 1930s, we were an Indian problem. And the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power wrote a report that was titled The Indian Problem.
Right.
Yeah, and so I don't know, we might get into that a little bit more today, but this is just a snapshot of like what our traditional homelands were in that area. And if you could see the depressed area on there, that's what's commonly referred to as Owens Valley. But, we went all over, way up into the Mono Basin and, south of Patsiata, which we call the Owens Drained Lake today, and over even into Yosemite. And so this was a very large area that we cared for and took care of since the beginning of time. And I'll talk about the land exchange. So after the Indian Problem Report came out, which basically said that we were living on LADWP-owned lands, we were living on federal government lands in these scattered areas, and we were using I think the quote was immense quantities of water. We were wasting water. The report said that it was recommended that we be moved onto these centralized reservations where there would be better control over the Indians. The question of land entitlement would be addressed unquestionably. And what was really happening at the time is we were living on different parcels at this point in time, and I'm jumping ahead into our history, where Los Angeles was having to supply water to these parcels that the United States owned, because the United States owned shares in these canal companies, and they were entitled to get that water. And when LA came in and started buying up all the ranches surrounding those areas, they no longer had a need to supply water to those parcels, except for the Indians that were living there. And so they're like, gosh, we're wasting a lot of water having to, push this water out to these different areas. So that was, a big push for doing this land exchange. And when the land exchange took place, the United States government, and you can see from these little, the maps here, gave up almost 3,000 acres of land in exchange for just under 1,400 acres of land of LADWP, City of Los Angeles owned lands. And we're, grateful to have the reservation lands that we have, but we've really outgrown them. We don't have space for housing. We don't have the space that we need to grow our food, like I mentioned earlier. We don't have space for recreation. I heard a couple gentlemen speaking about parks today. We don't have space on our reservations to have, green spaces and to have parks. We just don't have enough land. But LA owns the majority of the land up there. The City of Los Angeles owns that land, and surrounding each of the 3 reservations that I've highlighted here, the tribes that I represent, we're surrounded by the city of Los Angeles owned lands. And so part of our goal in the work that we're doing is not just to have sufficient water and enough water and to settle the claims that are associated with this land exchange, but also to have enough land where we could care for beyond the next 7 generations. So when this land exchange took place and the plans were drawn up, there wasn't any consideration for the future population growth of the indigenous people. I think most people thought we would be assimilated and move away, but that isn't the case. I always say when I introduce myself of where I'm from is that I really believe that the Creator put me in that place to do the work that I'm doing, to care for the land, to care for the water, and to help pave the way for our future generations. And it wasn't something that I started out and that I, specifically chose to do. Like I thought I was going to be a therapist, relationship therapist, and I ended up in this work. So, and I know it's because of the Creator. And so that is really like our huge need, and the city of Los Angeles, the city council, the mayor's office, they have the ability to help, right the wrongs that have been done to us. And there's so much history that I shared in past presentations of, how LA always had a hand in displacing us. And oftentimes with underhandedness, with violence. And like a speaker said earlier, it's not you today, none of you, but it's the institution. And you guys are the ones that are in place that can make the change. And these are just the arrows showing the reservations and the size. So, our sister tribe in Lone Pine's only 237 acres. Bishop tribe, which is my tribe's 875 acres. And a few years back, we were the 4th largest tribe population-wise in the state of California on one of the smallest reservations. Okay, so just talking a little bit more about the land exchange. So when that exchange happened, the act of Congress that authorized that exchange that, by the way, LA lobbied for very heavily, said that the land and the water and the mineral rights were to be traded, but that didn't happen. Just the land was traded. And after the land exchange took place, all the parties were under the assumption that the water rights would be traded. But as you guys are probably aware, your city charter prohibits the exchange of water rights without a 2/3 approval vote. So that didn't happen. And instead, what the negotiator said is that we will retain our own water rights, we'll deal with them later, we'll deliver some of that water to the boundaries of the reservation that the indigenous people can use for irrigation purposes, which we have been using. And so it really transferred the point of use of the water that the United States owned in these canal companies, but not the water rights themselves. And then about 60 years later, LA finally started engaging in negotiations on the water rights with the tribes. And when they did that, it was in exchange for the tribes to drop their friends of the court status in a lawsuit that was happening at the time between Inyo County, different environmental groups, and the city of Los Angeles. And it was over the inadequacy of the EIR for the second barrel of the aqueduct. So there was that lawsuit happening, and the tribes at that point in time were friends of the court, and we were part of that lawsuit. And then LA came and started working with the tribes and basically made a deal with the tribes that if we would drop our friends of the court status, that they would engage in meaningful negotiations with us. And as I said earlier, like your predecessors, looking at how they interacted with the tribes and with our federal representatives, and even some of their statements afterwards, they did not have the intention of negotiating in good faith. In my opinion, it appears that it was simply just to get us to drop that status and not be an MOU party to the long-term groundwater agreement. And I just want to read a quote from your guys' former city attorney who was interviewed in the late 1990s. And here he's saying is, when he's talking about like how LA reached agreements with all these environmental groups. He says, we did a deal with the Indians early on to get them out. And they were the only ones to get out during this process. And this was the process of, like I said, the court and trying to settle the MOU agreement that came out of that lawsuit. And he said, we agreed to talk to them, to sit down with them separately with a forum and talk with them. And they agreed to that, and they backed out of this amicus status. And so, you know, that was the goal. And LA succeeded in getting us out of those, out of the courts at the time, but it didn't settle our water rights. And the reasons why those negotiations were not fruitful and were unsuccessful is, you know, looking back at a one-page principle of agreement that was created, was it really lacked access to wet water. So in that agreement, we would have had to gone out onto these traded lands, you know, that are nowhere near our existing reservations, and put in wells and drill the wells and somehow figure out how to get that water where there aren't even any waterways today that are actively being used to the places where we need to use it. There was no additional lands included in those negotiations. And I know we can be creative about lands. City council has that authority. There's a lot of federal lands up there where we could do land trades just like we did in the 1939 land exchange. There's federal BLM land, Forest Service lands. None of that was considered. There was no infrastructure funding or plans in those negotiations. There wasn't any compensation for loss of water all those years. And it actually, looking at the language, gave Los Angeles more control over how we're managing our water that the little water that we do have today. But that's in the past. That's just a brief history of what took place in the land exchange. We're here today to ask you guys, in whatever form it is, to get your support to move forward with good faith negotiations to get these water rights settled, to work with us on land, especially the return of cultural lands. When I presented to CEO Quiones and Commissioner McGraw back in June, a few weeks back, I shared with them, you know, some of the areas that are really dear to us, especially the hot springs that's being run by, you know, colonial family that came in and not by tribes. And we had put in a request to be considered for that lease when it came up, and we're totally like skipped over. We have Department of Interior support for the negotiations. We're working with them and moving forward. It's a really good time in this administration and with you all to be able to be creative on some of the solutions to the issues and things that we're facing. And, you know, as you've seen the snapshot today, like you have a lot of people down here in Southern California that want to see, you know, our water rights settled. They want to see justice. They want to see equity. You know, that's a lot of the platform of what, you know, LA stands on today is justice and equity. And I think, you know, the time is right for that. And it also resolves potential litigation. There's always, you know, litigation hanging out there over these water settlement that hasn't happened yet. And it would also, you know, align with who I think LA is today and what I've seen. I've had the honor of coming down here and speaking and meeting a lot of the folks that live down here. And I truly believe this is the heart of the people of Los Angeles. And it would be a win-win for us all. Just think of what your legacy could be, what our legacy could be to have this historic water settlement. And a lot of attorneys that I talk to, water law attorneys, they're like, the Owens Valley case is like the most fascinating case in Western water. And it would be a true legacy for us all. So really, we would like to get some type of commitment from Los Angeles, from LADWP to work with the city council, city hall, to re-engage in water rights negotiations with us, to negotiate in good, true faith, you know, not just going through the motions, and also really seriously get creative with how we can work on land back for the tribes to meet the future needs of our people and even the needs of today. Like, we have a lot of social issues that we're dealing with on our reservation lands because of the lack of land and the lack of housing. And like I said, you know, our identity is tied to our homelands, we don't just like get up and leave and decide to move elsewhere because that's our identity. Our water is our identity. So that's it in a nutshell, and I just am so appreciative to be here today. I hope that we can have deeper dialogue and presentations with some of the other commissioners that haven't been able to see the deeper history, and as well as community members that would want to learn more, because this is just a little tiny piece of our long history of water and dealing with Los Angeles.
We ought to be clapping for sure. It was such a historical report for me, particularly. Thank God I wasn't born at the time or involved in any way at the signing of all of these things. And I do know we are sensitive to the problem. And as when I said earlier, I know these commissioners, I know their heart, their work, et cetera. Things might have been different if we had been the ones signing. But we, as you said, we are here today. We do hear you. In fact, I wish this report was given to the entire city council, because as you said, when you said how LA is today, yes, we are part of how LA is today, but we also have, I don't like the word masters, as you can imagine, but as we have people that we answer to, too. In fact, LA is two hands clapping. So at all times, you are always dealing with at least 10 fingers, and we're all trying to make the right sound, the right decision. And I know we're committed to that as well. And your presentation, for me, just brought it home, and I so appreciate it. And I also appreciate you bringing your two daughters with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much. Before I turn it over to George, do we have a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, we will circulate that to the city council as on your behalf, but our behalf as well. And greatly appreciate everyone coming today and what you had to say, and we are listening. And with that, I'll turn it over to George, who will speak for the commission.
Thank you.
So, Terry, thank you so much for coming today and for putting so much thought and love into this presentation. Since the first week I had this job, and I had the honor of coming up to meet you with Commissioner KATZ, we've really wanted an opportunity for you to come in front of the board and start educating us and our constituency on these really painful but important histories. And so I just have this sort of formal letter from the board to you today to show our appreciation for you. I want to thank Terry Reddell and the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission for coming today and for giving this presentation. And by the way, I really do encourage you, Wilma and Mia, to sit down with the commission and to get the longer form of this. I think the first presentation we did was probably 2 hours, and it was incredibly in-depth. There's so much nuance to this history that you miss in this 20-minute version that would be really powerful. There's also a documentary that Owens Valley Indian Water Commission was involved in that's really fascinating to watch. I'd also like to thank all the other enrolled tribal members, commission members and staff and other guests, especially our public commenters, for being here as we work to better understand our shared history in Payahunadu and to strengthen the government-to-government relationship with our tribal partners. Our new CEO, Janice Quinones, joined me last month, as you've heard, on a trip to the Valley for our quarterly in-person Tribal Engagement Committee meetings. It was one of the very first trips, actually, that she took as CEO of LEDWP. And the board is so grateful for the effort that she's begun to pour into these important relationships. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the Water Operations Division, Malad, Adam, your teams, and the corporate environmental staff for your efforts in support of our tribal relationships. You really carry a lot of that water for us, and we appreciate it. I want to introduce also our newly appointed tribal liaison, Ms. Audrey Wise. She's going to give us a little wave. We're so happy after almost a year plus of hunting to have Audrey with us, and she'll no doubt greatly enhance policy coordination between the board's Tribal Engagement Committee, which is me, the LEDWP executive leadership, and our tribal partners. This board is committed, as you've heard from Commissioner Pinder, to working directly with the sovereign tribal nations to ensure transparent and cooperative resource management, to preserve tribal heritage, to protect, as you've mentioned, Terry, culturally significant resources and places. And we want LADWP, in fact, we will make sure LADWP is a respectful and collaborative partner in the preservation and stewardship of the Eastern Sierra. But importantly, I think we understand that the growth of the city of Los Angeles has had a major impact, a negative impact on tribal nations and lands of the Owens Valley and Mono Basin throughout our history. And we're working toward ambitious new relationships, renewable energy, and drought resilience goals, work really to become ever better stewards of our shared resources and to build more flexibility and choice into that system. As we work to improve our communications, our transparency, our partnerships with the tribal nations of the Owens Valley, it's my job always to acknowledge, as others have, the significant federal and state regulations that we're now under, as well as city charter limitations that you've pointed out. We have to work creatively inside of these because they govern and in some cases limit many of the actions that we can take as a board. And we're excited to partner with you creatively in that process. Because I think despite these limitations, we're grateful to have made some progress already in this warmer relationship that we've been enjoying with each other. Projects that I've seen in my trips up to the valley, things like real estate transactions, natural resources management, species restoration, the preservation of cultural resources, even operational adjustments to the water system. And I think we all believe that we need to keep deepening the collaboration on all of those things as we continue talking. This board has previously committed to engaging tribal nations in open communication with mutual respect, flexibility, and in good faith. And we have many shared goals, including, very importantly, the preservation of tribal heritage and culturally significant places and objects. Today, we reaffirm our commitment to continue working closely with you. And so on behalf of myself and the other commissioners, the entire board, and the department, thank you for this unique opportunity to better understand our shared history in Paihunadu. We look really forward to engaging more deeply, creating new opportunities for our mutual stewardship of the Valley, and we really, really appreciate your time and your 30 years of work on this.
Thank you. Yeah, so one thing that I did want to add is when we had met back in June, our Owens Valley Indian Water Commission board chairperson, who also serves on the Bishop Tribal Council, Stephen Oriella, had asked, understanding that LADWP in itself doesn't have the authority to negotiate, that authority comes from City Council, if you guys would consider writing or communicating with City Council members and City Hall on the authority to re-engage with the tribes in water rights negotiations, or creating a task force with City Council and DWP to re-engage. And I know it was left that you needed to talk to your LA City Council on that. And so I just, want to keep that, in the forefront and hopefully get some time frame of when we can get an answer to that request and suggestion.
Terry, we appreciate that. And we will definitely get back to you, and it will be much quicker than in the past. Of course, that's a low bar, but, I'm not saying something that no one knows. No, but, no, Terry, in all seriousness, it is a serious request, and we will treat it as such, and talk to our counterparts at the council and get back to you, but that will happen.
Okay. And I thank my fellow commissioner for summarizing the thought that's in all of our hearts. It's very well stated. Thank you.
I also want to thank you for this incredibly, it's a moving sort of testimonial on your part. And I personally would like to have a photograph with you and your family, as I have a daughter and a granddaughter in that age group, and I think it would be very meaningful for them too.
Thank you. I'd also like to say thank you for being here today and just echo what George said in terms of the importance of the full presentation and any materials that you want to send. We have the documentary we will definitely share with council members, and I have shared with others. I made sure that Janice, when she started, our new CEO, received that documentary and other materials even before she met with you. We really believe that understanding our history is critical for every Angelino. And I know you've done some outreach and education down here in schools, but I think we need more of that. That's just something that everyone needs to understand and acknowledge in order for us to find a path forward. So thank you for all of that. And also to Annie, if she's still here, for her work on the aqueduct between us, which is also a really important piece that I recommend people view and read if you want to read her master's as well. But I really just wanted to echo George's comments and say how important this is. In the biodiversity motion that we put forward, there is a commitment also for LADWP to really learn from traditional ecological knowledge. And we do all have so much to learn and so much that we can do to really engage in the R's that Annie mentioned, in reciprocity and in respect and in relationship, and to restore so much. So I look forward to future collaborations, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Janice, do you want to add, or?
I started by saying thank you for being here, and you know, it was really important for me to get the education you gave me at the Owens Valley visit, and I think this is a topic that we continue to learn from. 100 years of history has a lot of information that I think we all have to uncover and figure out how to work better together. But I think I said it before, you have the right people at the table now, between the mayor's office, my leadership team, and the commissioners that were committed to have these conversations.
Thank you again. Thank you for making the trip and being here and sharing your thoughts with us. We're going to take a 10-minute break and then come back to finish the rest of the commission's business.
Oh no, it might be different. Excuse me, we will begin momentarily. Excuse me, we will be beginning momentarily. Attention, we will be beginning momentarily. Attention, we will begin momentarily.
Anybody gives me anything now, I know to give it to you first. No, seriously. I'll give it to you first.
Please take your seats. We will begin momentarily. Please take your seats. We will begin momentarily. Please maintain silence in the audience and at the dais to allow recording to begin. Mr. President, we're ready whenever you are.
Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off, sort of.
If we can.
With a lot to think about in between. Let me just quickly, before we take the next management report while we're settling down, any objection to adopting the minutes? All members present? Motion second.
Second.
Adopted, thank you.
4 ayes, motion adopted.
Thank you. Anything from neighborhood councils?
No neighborhood councils discussions for any items on this agenda.
Thank you. Any motions for future consideration? No. All right, let's go back up now to the second management report, which is on the LA River Ecosystem Restoration Project. Please.
Gentlemen, you realize you have a hard act to follow now?
We do. I had a feeling this was the wrong presentation. If we could have it switched to the one that's online. I'll try to buy some time.
I'm sorry, could you please speak to me on a sidebar?
So this is the incorrect PowerPoint. The
Right,
one
can we
that's-
speak on a sidebar, please?
She's saying, can you step over and talk to her?
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks. And while we're waiting, I do just want to say that, yes, it's a tough act to follow, but as was acknowledged by our speaker, it is all connected. And this work that we're doing on the LA River, the work that we're going to hear about on Operation Next today is all part of creating a more sustainable future for Los Angeles and being responsible stewards of resources. So not unrelated. And we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Good?
Apologies, please bear with me. Would you like to go to item I3 instead?
It's ready to go.
Okay.
do that.
Can we please have the presenters for items I3 come forward in the meantime? Operation Next.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Anselmo Collins, Senior AGM over the water system. I'm very happy to be here today to provide an update on Operation Next as well as Hyperion 2035. As you have all heard for the last couple of years, the Department of Water and Power has been working really hard on developing Operation Next, which is a portable reuse program for the city of Los Angeles. So today, what we're having is a joint presentation by LADWP as well as our partners at LA Sanitation and the Environment. So what we want to do is develop a joint collaborative water reuse project for the entire city of LA. And we recognize that the importance of this, especially with climate change, becoming less reliant on imported water and more efficient in the way we use water here in Los Angeles. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so I'm not going to go through all the items here on the agenda, but as you can tell, we have an awful lot of information we want to share with the board. So you're going to hear from a couple of people here today. First of all, we have from LA Sanitation, Tracy Minamide. We also have Mr. Hugh Cox, also from LA San. From LADWP, you have Rafael Villegas, who is a program manager for Operation Next. With that, can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so I'm going to let Tracy actually take the first part of this slide and talk a little bit about LA San and specifically Hyperion 2035. Tracy.
Thank you, Anselmo. Good afternoon, President KATZ, honorable commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here today jointly presenting with our partners, the Department of Water and Power, on this very important water recycling project. Just to start out, as part of the framework, wanted to say that one of the cornerstones for LA Sanitation and Environment is that of taking what's waste and making it a resource. And this program is a prime example of exactly that. We are talking about taking 260 million gallons a day of wastewater that today comes to our Hyperion water reclamation plant and converting that to potable water that will become a new source of water for the city of Los Angeles. We started this effort in 2019 when the city adopted this goal for 100% water recycling. We've been working very hard over those last 5 years. At LA San, our emphasis has been on developing the concepts, the feasibility, doing the site analysis, engineering, hydraulics, everything to look at how this can be done at the Hyperion site. That effort continues to move along. We also recognize the importance of evaluating various alternatives. So concurrently, we're working with the Department of Water and Power on alternatives and looking at other options to see where in the end the best site location will be for this massive effort.
Great. So at the same time, concurrently, LADWP was working on Operation Next. We were focusing on the final treatment as well as conveyance, storage, and the demands in the system to make sure that we can develop a program and a project that will maximize the use of recycled water for the city of Los Angeles. So we have been collaborating with LA San, looking at technical, financial, managerial issues to make sure that we're all well lined up, that we can deliver a program that is best for Angelenos. So the goal is to overall is to implement a program that's a single citywide program when it comes to water reuse. Now, as you have heard, we always talk about two programs. We talk about Hyperion 2035. We also speak about Operation Next. So I'm very happy to report and to announce, so I guess I get to do the big reveal, that we are actually merging these two programs into one. So moving forward, as opposed to hearing these two different programs, you will hear a single unified program. The name of that is Pure Water Los Angeles. So from now on, that will be the name that would identify this citywide effort to bring portable reuse to the city of Los Angeles and expand the reuse that we already have in the city of Los Angeles. So from now on, Pure Water Los Angeles is the name. And obviously the reason we picked pure water is because pure water is now synonymous in the industry with portable reuse. and we recognize from a brand recognition perspective, it's important for people to know what we're talking about when we talk about Pure Water Los Angeles. So I'm very happy to announce that. There's been great collaboration between LA Sound Communications folks as well as LADWP's folks under Joe Ramallo that came up with this name, and be able to announce that here today. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we have been working on is, in a working group, is working on making sure that we have a unified vision and mission. And I'm not going to read all the words that are there, but what I do want to do, however, is take a moment to acknowledge the working group that we have. It's a working group that is led by 2 commissioners from LADWP and 2 commissioners from Public Works. So NURIT KATZ, Vice President George McGraw, but we also have a former DWP commissioner and current Board of Public Works Commissioner, Susana Reyes, who is here in the audience. And we also have, as a member, Teresa Villegas, who Teresa is the Vice President of the Board of Public Works that also is part of this group. We also have the leadership from the Mayor's Office, Nancy Sutley, who is the Deputy Mayor of Energy and Sustainability, as well as Randall Winston, who is Deputy Mayor over Infrastructure. So the goal is for this group to be able to make sure that we are unified and that we're progressing the efforts the City of LA has when it comes to portable reuse in the City of Los Angeles. So once again, you can see the vision and the mission there. Our goal really is to be able to diversify our water supply portfolio to make sure that we do it in an equitable fashion, that we can mitigate any risk that we have for climate change, but also ensure that we have equitable and resilient future for the region. We have seen this in the last couple of years when we talk about water supply and that climate whiplash, and this is going to help us be able to mitigate some of that impact, as well as impacts to the environment because of the operations that we have in the city. I would like to go to the next slide and ask Tracy to go ahead and talk about some of the unified goals that we've developed as well.
Okay, so expanding on what Anselmo was saying in regard to our mission and vision, we worked very hard together to create unified goals. We have 6 of those goals, very relevant to what Anselmo was speaking of. I would say at the top is really we need to create a new water supply. As I said, what now is being discharged and lost out into Santa Monica Bay is something that we see as a pot of gold. That's our resource, and it's going to help us create that new supply that will help diversify the water portfolio. You'll also note in some of these goals that we fall under the general umbrella of the City of Los Angeles in terms of working towards reliability, resiliency, and sustainability. Some of the work that we want to do on both of our sides in terms of infrastructure is to look at the refurbishment and making sure that the foundation of the infrastructure we have in place right now will be sustainable into the future, and that we can expand from there on the advanced treatment components. All of this, of course, through the lens of equity. So these goals have taken us some time to put together. We're very happy to report that they represent all parties involved.
Great. So one of the slides that we had before talked about the master plan. So back in 2021, the Board of Water and Power Commissioners directed staff to develop a master plan to make sure that we're looking at all the options available. So next up is going to be Rafael Villegas, who is the Program Manager for Operation Next, now known as Pure Water Los Angeles, and he's going to talk to you about where we are in the master plan and what to expect in the next couple of months. And I'm going to go ahead and sit back down and give it over to Rafael and Hugh.
Thanks, Anselmo.
Good afternoon, Board President, Vice President, and Commissioners. Thank you for having me here. This is the 4th time, if memory serves, that I've presented on Operation Next to this board, and it makes me very happy to come in and present as Pure Water Los Angeles. And so moving forward, you'll see that branding begin to take shape. And going back to 2021, at the time between when former Mayor Garcetti launched the program in 2019 and when I presented in 2021, we had a general concept of what we wanted to build, and we presented that at the board at that time. And so
at the conclusion of that, we were tasked with mirroring the LA 100 approach, with looking at it with looking at a range of scenarios, validate the work that we had done to date, and determine the range of costs, develop rate-based revenue impacts, identify partnerships, funding strategies, and also opportunities for phasing, identification of major milestones, and potentials for off-ramps or triggers that may allow the program to move forward. So we did pivot, and since that point, we tasked one of our contracting mechanisms to bring in outside consultants to do that work for us under our guidance and develop the range of scenarios for us. And so with that, while that was going on and we were pivoting on what the outside of the Hyperion fence line was gonna look like, we were in coordination with LA San, as you heard Tracy describe the work inside the fence line. So I'm gonna hand over the next slide over to my colleague Hugh, so he can describe the work that they've been doing regarding Hyperion.
Yeah, thank you, Raphael. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Huub Cox, LA Sanitation and Environment. Thank you for having us here. So I'll take a little bit more time in terms of discussing the technical components of Hyperion being part of the Pure Water Los Angeles program. And of course, we started our technical work back in 2019. So that's about 5 years of a lot of technical evaluations. We prepared about 25 different technical memos. We did a lot of workshops, I believe over 60 workshops, together with LA San, our colleagues at Water and Power. The Bureau of Engineering was involved, and as well as the respective consultant teams. So that is all now culminating in us developing a program implementation plan. And we will complete that plan focusing again on Hyperion within the fence line of Hyperion. And that plan will be ready in about 1 to 2 months from now. And basically, it's the technical layout of transforming Hyperion to 100% recycled water. In parallel to that, we're also developing a program management plan. And that plan is developing a program management structure, as well as the procedures and the protocols that we need to implement to effectively implement our program at Hyperion. Then lastly, 2024 is kind of an important year for us because right now we're completing 5 years of conceptual planning and we're ready to transition to the design phases. So what we started recently is the preparation of a conceptual design report for the very first phase of our program at Hyperion.
Thank you, Hugh. And so this slide outlines the approach that we have, our holistic approach on the how we're going to plan to use the water from Hyperion, and includes replenishment of groundwater basins, regional partnerships, and moving the water to the start of our water system at the LA Aqueduct filtration plant. And we've broken it up into 3 approaches, and I'll describe what they mean. The approach one, well, let me back up. You see several lines on the map there, and it basically shows alternative alignments. Not everything on that map will get built, and it's just part of the alternatives analysis where we're trying to figure out where to move the water. And generally speaking, depending on which route you take, different opportunities open up and others close. Now, in terms of how we're looking at the approach one, if you look at the first vertical column, you have 3 alternatives there, and that assumes you are leveraging the existing indirect potable reuse regulations that were approved in 2014. So you're saying we're not going to do DPR. We know the regs are out there. But let's just go with tried and true indirect potable reuse. And so we looked at scenarios around that. Approach 2 and approach 3 leverage the new direct potable reuse regulations that were adopted by the state at the later part of last year. And again, you see the same alignments. It's just how are you going to use that water and what buckets become available to you. Now, In the direct potable reuse regulations, there's a couple of ways to meet compliance. One is you do the prescribed treatment train, and that's full direct potable reuse. Or there's an alternatives clause where if you can show that your alternative treatment is equivalent or better than the prescribed, that is also an approach for you to meet compliance. And so approach 2 is what we call post AWPF, where you're only at advanced treating the water that you want to DPR. And the benefit of that is that you don't have to direct potable reuse treat every single drop of water out of Hyperion. So when you're looking through the lens of affordability, we thought it would behoove us to visit that approach and see if it's viable. But we're also looking at full direct potable reuse. So what that opens up is potential to be able to put water directly into some of our reservoirs and even pipe to pipe integration. But the biggest thing that I take away before I leave this slide is when you look at storage. Storage is going to be a major component on how we use the water. When you look at the West Coast, the Central, San Fernando Basin, between those three basins, there's approximately 1 million acre feet of available storage. So that's groundwater has been depleted and you have space to be able to fill up. Not to say there's not any challenges there in terms of contamination and so forth, but the way I see that, that's about 2 years of the city's water supply. So when you compare it to the potential of that much water without having to build a dam, I think really in terms of resilience, it does provide you a lot of flexibility. And the other thing, though, I do want to stress that the reason you see the pipes, why are we building a big pipe to the other end of the valley, is that there are vulnerabilities that we're trying to address, where there's areas along the northern rim of the valley that you can only get water to if that water goes through the LA Aqueduct filtration plant, which is why that is a strategic priority. As we saw a couple years ago, the department was on borrowed water from the state, and so we want to be able to address that vulnerability as well to ensure reliability to our customers. Here, and I'm not going to go into detail to get you to understand what it is, but it is the 9 alternatives that you previously saw on the last slide. But what I want to show is that in terms of how we scored the criteria, we wanted to things that were we tasked the water system executive team with letting us know what's important. So in terms of priorities, minimizing operational complexity, adaptability to future supply and demand changes, cost effectiveness, regulatory acceptance, phasing, early deliveries, regional partnerships, and environmental stewardships. And I kind of want to point to the middle of the bars. If you're looking at all 9 there, the light blue, you can see the 3 on the left. It's a little smaller than the 3 in the center, and that's cost effectiveness. And so what we saw was when you apply the different rating factors, particularly for approach 1, so that's the 3 on the left, we saw that the benefit of that overall dropped. Reason being is utility. If you're only using the groundwater basins, if you're going with that approach, the basins with the amount of water that we're projecting that's going to be produced will fill up relatively quickly and will not have the capacity to drain that water. So if you're really looking at a strategy to maximize the water that you're trying to get out of Hyperion, you're really looking at alternatives 4 through 9. So we screen the first 3 out moving forward, and then we're going to go through additional screening process as we move through the summer. With that, let me hand it back over to Hugh.
So going back to Hyperion, so all the technical work that we conducted over the past 5 years, they essentially confirm the technical feasibility of converting Hyperion to 100% water recycling. So what you see on the slide here today is Hyperion today, an aerial view of Hyperion today with overlays of the implementation of recycled water in 3 different phases. And that's represented by the 3 different colors that you see on the slide. So just going through those 3 phases, the way we envision it for Hyperion is that the first phase, which is in the green color, will produce 50 million gallons per day of recycled water for indirect potable reuse. Then switching over to phase 2, we would be able to add an additional 40 MGD of recycled water for indirect potable reuse, bringing that to a new total of 90 MGD. And then phase 3 is going to be the largest phase of the 3, having the potential to add an additional 120, perhaps 140 MGD of new recycled water at Hyperion, bringing that to a new total of a maximum of between 210 and perhaps even up to 230 MGD of new recycled water. What is important to note here is we really need to have a phased approach to construction at Hyperion. And the reason for that is that we have to keep Hyperion 100% operational at all times. So we cannot do all the construction at once. Now we have to phase it out in 3 different phases. But equally important is going to be that our phasing approach is going to fully align with the other side of the equation, being the demand side, which is being developed by Raphael and his master plan.
Raphael, what do you anticipate the demand being on a daily basis?
We actually developed a water balance model that's going to tell us that. And so what we see, what we're analyzing is normal wet and dry conditions. We're in under dry conditions. When you look at the amount of water, about half of our demand on an annual basis. But when you look at how not only the fluctuations in the diurnal, but seasonal fluctuations in demand, there might be times where we may not be able to use all the water, and that's where the strategies of either finding partnerships, putting water in the ground, potentially off basin storage, looking at different ways where it's not competing with other water supplies, because it could potentially, at the scale that we're talking about, you could potentially be pushing off other more cost-effective water supplies.
But just for my benefit, so I need things simple sometimes. What's our daily usage?
I want to say it's in the range of about 440 million gallons a day.
It's around 450 million gallons a day.
450 million?
Yeah, on average, that's our demand, yes.
So that helps me put into perspective the millions of gallons we're talking about. Right. It all gets lost in the translation, at least for me. So little buckets, not big buckets.
So it's really close to about half of our water supply when you think of it in those terms.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, now you can see that with LA they've done some very good work in terms of how everything could potentially fit within Hyperion, and there's other considerations that we're looking at. But as part of our alternatives, our analysis, we said, you know what, it might be best to save some of the room at Hyperion and look at also off-site locations. So you can see just a couple that we looked at off-site, including we noticed that LA World Airports has a lot of land. After engaging with them, we understood that all of this land is already dedicated for their expansion. So they need to do things that be FAA compliant. So we're like, okay. And looking at also Edward C. Little's another possibility benefit there is that it's already a recycled water facility that's currently recycling water. And in terms of goal for looking at offsite locations to the extent possible is how do we minimize costs by leveraging existing infrastructure and also existing conveyance infrastructure, finding partnerships, and also looking at opportunities for earlier delivery. So that's part of the alternatives analysis that we were charged to conduct as part of the briefing back in 2021.
Raphael, you may want to just mention that EDC Little is a facility that belongs to a different agency. I don't think you mentioned that.
Yeah, so Edward C. Little is owned and operated by West Basin Municipal Water District. So we've been partners with them going back to the 1990s when they built out their recycled water system. So they are, because of the conveyance that's there, looking at how we build out Hyperion, which is the first bucket that becomes available, which is the second bucket that becomes available. And that's where we're trying to align how LA Sand converts does the modernization of Hyperion to how we build out our conveyance infrastructure. So we do have some preliminary costs that I did want to daylight here, and you can see we screened out alternative one just because of the utility of the amount of water you'd be able to use is so small that we thought let's put that aside and focus on how we can maximize. And you have the two approaches, approach 2 and approach 3. Again, approach 2 is where you start off with indirect potable reuse and you do tail end polishing at the location of where you're going to integrate with your system. So from our perspective, that would be the LA Aqueduct filtration plant, and you would just you would further polish to DPR levels the water that you would use. Approach 3 is the prescribed treatment train in the direct potable reuse regulations, and in order to meet those regs, every drop, the 260 million gallons a day that Tracy mentioned, would have to go through an additional treatment on the front end in order to meet compliance. And you can see when the numbers that we've run, you're in the range of between 21 billion to 25 billion, so about a $4 billion difference in capital costs and about $50 million difference in operation and maintenance costs. So the way we are putting the master plan together, in my mind, it makes sense to start it with indirect potable reuse. And as you get the first facility up and running, you can do your testing for the alternatives clause. You also have to do testing for the prescribed treatment train. But in essence, as you're building out your system, at some point you come to a fork in the road. And so then at that point, if you have success with the alternatives clause, then you can continue down that path. But if you say, okay, the bar is so high using the alternatives clause, we may need to defer back and just say, okay, that's not going to pan out. We are going to use the prescribed treatment train. In that regard, it allows us at least time initially to not overbuild, ensure that the water is fit for purpose, not overtreat. Since groundwater is part of the strategy, you don't want to treat to potable, put it in the ground, pump it up only so you can treat it again. So we're looking at how we can best, not only from the technical but also affordability perspective, lay out the build out of the program. Now,
Hey, Rafael.
Yes.
Do we know if anybody has gotten the alternative process approved yet, or this will be the first attempt to get it approved through the regulators?
There will be other agencies that are ahead of us in that regard, particularly where we are on the pre-planning phase. So we know, for example, San Diego is going to use the prescribed treatment train, but they had regulatory reasons for using it. But now with most other folks are also going to be looking at the alternatives clause, and we're looking to partner with a lot of these agencies in terms of studies and seeing if it's viable, because every piece of data that we can get to show the regulators, hey, this is a viable path forward, we can then try to proceed down that path. Now, not to say that any two projects are the same, because the characteristics of each wastewater stream is different. So you have to show that for your specific waste stream that it would work. So we still have to go through the testing, but there is a lot we can learn through that process of what other folks are doing. And there's a lot of folks that are already ahead of us in that regard. They already have pilot facilities up and running. They're doing testing, and with the new regs there, it provides some clarity on which approach is the most prudent.
So no, not one yet approved, but ahead on the process with hopes that it will be approved.
Correct. And so with the direct potable reuse regulations recently adopted in December, and I believe just in the last couple of weeks entered into the administrative code, it's just brand new landscape for people to process what's there and then how we're going to comply.
And from a timeline perspective, when is our point of no return for making a decision between the alternative versus the prescribed train?
And thinking about the build out, I would say you could. So there's a couple of opportunities. If you're looking at West Coast and Central Basin, you can do indirect potable reuse. Now at some point, 10, 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, if there's then a comfort level for, say, treated water augmentation, so that's pipe to pipe, you could then make that decision or plan ahead of that to say, okay, now we're going to either do the prescribed train or the alternative train, and then at that point you have a window to then start planning for that. The thing is, you have to plan ahead where if there is a certain approach that we're going to take, whether it's on-site or off-site. for that, if you want to fall back and do the prescribed train, you have to leave room there. And it's the treatment is ozone and biological activated carbon. So you have to leave enough of a footprint so you can incorporate that at a later time.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of community engagement, so I see this initiative as much as a social science effort as a technical one, because it is huge. You're talking $20 billion plus over 30 years. So we had to think about how do you implement a program this big through the lens of equity, and also being transparent with our ratepayers. And so one of the main things, you look at affordability, access to clean water, public health, jobs, inclusivity, and environmental benefits and impacts. One of the things that I see as an opportunity is in terms of jobs. We see data that says that LA County may see a reduction in population in the coming decades. So with other major initiatives coming through, not only Pure Water Los Angeles, but Pure Water Southern California, the Olympics, and the MTA transportation corridors, there's going to be a lot of competition for limited human resources. So when we go through and build through these neighborhoods, what legacy do we leave behind? Do we simply bury the pipe, or do we try to strategically partner with our communities to see how we can meet their needs? And again, to address some of these areas that were identified under LA 100, we thought a lot of these actually translate well to water as well. And so in terms of our workforce development, we want to show that this can be a viable economic engine for the city. And the way I see it is we need to engage our middle schools, high schools, trade schools, and talk to younger folks, let them know that there's viable careers here, not just for blue collar, but also white collar going into the future. Here, since 2019, I just want to highlight the outreach that we've done. It's just a simple breakdown between us and LA San. It's been over 180 presentations given to date to a wide range of audiences, community members, elected officials, other government agencies, industry professionals. And with the merging that we now have, we are working on a joint outreach plan. And what we're expecting to do is at the completion of the master plan, which is expected to be done at the end of this year, and we start launching our programmatic CEQA, the outreach will continue. On this slide, I want to show that I know that there's a lot of times there's this impression out there that we all, government agencies, we work in a silo, but we've actually been quite collaborative with a lot of the agencies you see here. Key partner, obviously, sitting next to us side by side, LA San, but also key of the strategy is groundwater storage. So you see the groundwater basin managers there, and then we're also looking at potential partnerships, which you can see their logos there, but particularly in terms of when you're talking about regional reach of the program, Metropolitan Water District, Public Works, West Basin, to name a few. And we do cooperate at all levels, staff level, middle management, and even exec levels in some of these collaborative meetings. Now, in terms of next steps is, as I mentioned, completion of the master plan. It says there about 60% in July. We're right about there in terms of finding out what are the next steps. Now, in August, we have another series of workshops that we're doing to kind of start sharpening our pencils and refining some of our numbers, developing some cash flows, phasing, and so forth, and also kicking off of our outreach. And what we do plan is once the master plan is complete, I do plan to come back before this board and present on the final recommendations to move forward then to reinitiate our CEQA process. And I do want to hand over the last three items on the slide over to Hugh.
One quick question. Sorry to interrupt. This timeline up here for the master plan detailed analysis and the board update, that remains unchanged from before when we had our time phasing for Operation Next, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, it's been at the end of the year for a while now.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty comfortable that we'll get there.
Okay.
Rafael, I was going to urge you to take a breath in there at some point. I was getting worried about you, but
I get that a lot. Sorry.
No. I appreciate the enthusiasm. But at what point do we start producing enough out of this program to reduce what we take from MWD?
So when we look at the phasing plan, and that's where we have to work, with LA on where we can, how soon can we start initiating some of these scenarios. Now, our first bucket doesn't really generate any water. We're looking at, again, natural partner West Basin. They already get our water, but could get potentially higher quality water. It's not a one for one. Now, our first bucket that we see is the Central Basin, and so it's about 2.5, 3 miles from the end of the West Basin system. So I said, okay, if we can build this pipe, it'll get us there. But it's not that simple. Building that pipeline to get you there is one thing, but you got to build a network of injection wells, extraction wells, but also characterization of the basin. And that process, what we've seen, can take. We're estimating between 16 to 19 years to begin to get production approval for production in there. So we'll have to then back out from the regulatory piece in order to be able to plan out what you need to build and having these facilities in place. Now, the next phase after that would be getting to the San Fernando Valley. So getting over the hill is no easy task. And so we have to think about which would be the appropriate route. Do you go up, for example, Sepulveda or the Cahuenga alignments, and each one has their version of hard. One has it's a wider mountain, the other one has more disadvantaged communities. And so, but once you get to the San Fernando Basin, essentially you could drink down all the water. We're looking at that maybe a 25-year horizon. And then the final phase would be to get to the filtration plant. And so that's where, once we get that in place, that's where we expect to see most of the water go. And we're going to use the basins sort of to level off our demands when we have times where we don't have, we have, for example, a lot of aqueduct water that we need to bring down, and we have nowhere else to go, because then you have the waters competing. At the same time, cleaning up of the San Fernando Basin, there's minimum amounts that we need to pump, and so we have to be able to then manage that basin more conjunctively. That would give us the right more levers, but enough redundancy so that we don't overflow any one particular bucket, because if that happens, water ends up in the ocean.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because one of the challenges, and I was curious to the timeline, is that we've built a great system here for getting all the water out to the ocean quickly. We don't have much of a system for getting it everywhere it started from. So that's why I was curious about, how you're looking at that and the different. I appreciate the explanation.
And President KATZ, one thing that we kind of gloss over, if you go back to the map of the conveyance systems, was the MWD connection, which is critical on how we're going to operate the future of the water system, more of a regional base than local base. And that connection for us, it will, one, allow us to take on more water from Hyperion, because we can't store it all in our territory, but also would allow us to push and pull water from a MWD as needed. So I think the relationship with MWD will be different in a different kind of way operationally.
Yeah, appreciate that. That's a good indication too. I mean, it needs to be realigned, that relationship. Yeah.
And that's the black line. That's the black line that you see going east and west.
That realignment with MWD remains to be realized, right? I mean, there's a political reality to that. They'll have to vote and be onboarded to this vision of.
It's a ways off.
They've been part of the discussion on the partnership, and I think the state is thinking about the regional outcomes of all this pure water projects and how we support the whole California economy. But yeah.
Yeah, and
because we're not the only ones that have the plumbing problem. I mean,
correct.
We have a larger one than a lot of people do, but
yeah.
It may be a way then. If you took a regional approach where you can move stuff east-west as opposed to north-south, may be a better way to do it at some point.
Yeah, and each one of the scenarios that you see here has that metropolitan connection to the east. It's just a question of how big will it be, because again, assuming there's one scenario, alternative 3 assumes all the water flows to metropolitan, but with our vulnerability on the north end of the valley, will that resolve it? If we can do water exchanges as long as there's water available, right? And so that's where we're looking at how do you right size these buckets and manage these different buckets to give you the greatest amount of operational flexibility.
And each of these alternatives on conveyance would require new construction along those corridors?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's all new pipe.
That's your timeline of 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
In
hope it's
hindsight,
25 years. Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Raphael, excuse me, in hindsight, I've always asked myself this question. Would you have located Hyperion where it's located? It seems,
It was a good idea at the time.
Hyperion is located where it is because the sewer system is primarily a gravity flow system. So for the efficiency in that regard, that's why Hyperion is located, out near the ocean.
I kind of knew that. It just seems like it creates a whole other slew of.
Well, I will say that we did have some foresight in the construction of the Tillman Water Reclamation Plant in Los Angeles, Glendale. So those are upstream plants that are used for recycling the water in that upstream area.
Yes.
And you all know that we have the Advanced Water Purification Project going on there right now, which is under design jointly with sanitation and DWP.
And I do want to add, just back to this map again. When we first envisioned the program, we thought, okay, about half of the city's footprint is south of the Santa Monica. So looking at the demand, why can't we use all the water there? And so what we quickly realized is if you try to integrate, even if you do pipe to pipe, you go treated water augmentation, our system, just like Hyperion, designed to flow out to the ocean, is designed to flow from north to south, even over the Santa Monica Mountains, it flows and you just pump to the higher areas. So what happens is if you try to go too big and do too much integration south of the Santa Monica Mountains, that slows down the water coming over those mountains, and you can end up with the unintended consequences of nitrification of our storage facilities along the Santa Monica Mountains. So you have to try and work within the way the system was designed, which kind of leads us back all the way to the northern end of our system. And that was my last slide. I would say my next line was I can now take questions, but we're off and running.
Yeah. I think one key point that Raphael made is the movement of water is important on how our system is designed. And so when we think about what Hyperion can produce and what we can take, I think it ties to the next presentation on the LA River as well, but we got to maximize where we can store water, use water, move water to, so we optimize production from recycle to endpoint.
Yeah.
There was, I know at one point people talked about using some of the gravel pits out in the Northeast Valley as storage, since that was obviously high groundwater before it was all mined, and now it's big squares of open space. Is that not feasible to use as storage, or?
It is. There are agreements that go back to, I believe, the 1930s, 40s, where the mining company can excavate, and once they're done, they're to deed the land back to the city, and I think the intent was it would be used as a landfill, and it would be filled up, and then at that point it would be deeded back. So there are like legal issues around how those facilities would get acquired, but I used to manage the stormwater or the watershed management group, overseeing the stormwater projects, and that was one of our priorities: is how can we partner with the current owners to realize a potential for not only even just before Operation Next, but looking at how you can maximize the stormwater flows coming off of the Angeles National Forest and divert it so you can start filling in the San Fernando Basin as well. So they are opportunities, just a matter of figuring out the logistics around how to acquire access to those sites.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have questions at this time, but I just want to acknowledge the team. I know this was a tight deadline and timeline in which to integrate two very complex projects into this joint work. The work that you're doing, I think, can be and will be a model for many different projects within the city when we have diverse different agencies with different goals, but also, unified mission, and being able to really bring that together and take the cohesive approach that we need, the interdisciplinary approach that we need to solve these challenges for the future of the city is really commendable. And I'm very excited about this work and look forward to seeing how it evolves. So thank you all very much for the joint presentation today.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Sorry, Fred?
A couple of questions. How does this integrate with the pilot project at Tillman? How does that fit into the overall process, and how do those volumes compare? And also, what about overall staffing for Pure Water LA? How is staffing needed on the city side in addition to what might be provided by contractors?
You want me to take a stab at that? I think between Tracy and I can
Yes.
answer that question. So let's start with Tillman. So the Tillman project, as Tracy mentioned, is a joint project between DWP and LA San, where we're going to be maximizing recycled water at Tillman. The goal of the program is to be able to treat up and be able to produce 21,000 acre feet of water per year. The intent of that water is for indirect potable reuse. So it's going to go into the San Fernando Basin. We're going to go up to Hanson and then percolate into the ground. So I think that's going really well. We are in design phase, as Tracy mentioned before, and we are to be coming back to the board later on this year, and our hope is to start construction by the end of the year or so.
Right.
So, and as far as staffing, one of the things is when we develop the master plan, we're also going to be developing, as part of that, and concurrent with that, is what are the needs that we have when it comes to staff. I think that we're going to have a need not just for the folks building the facilities, and I think that speaks to what Rafael talked about, workforce development, but I think also what it talks about staffing for us. There will be positions and classifications that don't exist right now in the city of LA. For example, having an advanced treatment water certification from the Division of Drinking Water. That's something brand new. I think the whole state has like 4 or 5 people that have that. We're going to have to develop that in-house as well, so that the city of LA will be able to have people with the right certifications. So my goal is, based on alternatives, is to identify the needs that we have. My expectation is that I'm going to have a need for operators, for mechanics, for folks on the construction side that will be able to manage these facilities. You know, early on in the process, we had done a quick estimate of the number of jobs created by Operation Next when it was Operation Next by itself, and the number was somewhere in the 30,000 range. But that was jobs doing construction and afterwards. And that's where workforce development becomes very critical. We're going to have to work as a partner regionally to develop that pipeline of new employees. And the one thing that I've told my staff before is, this is an opportunity for us to develop a program that will allow us to target those areas, disadvantaged areas, where people are either unemployed or underemployed, introduce them to the water industry. It's a great industry, but a lot of people don't know what we do. All they know, they turn the tap and there's water. So now we'll be able to not just deliver a new source of water, but to develop really good paying jobs. But I do think that the key is going to be for us to be able to take that training to them, to make it a lot easier for them to be able to get the training and get the qualifications that are needed to be able to apply for those civil service jobs, do well in the exams, and get hired on. So it is much greater than just a water supply project. But that's kind of what I'm seeing right now, Dr. Pico. We'll have more detailed information as we develop further the master plan, but certainly there will be a need for a lot of staffing to be increased.
And part of the analysis that I presented in 2021 essentially showed that 2-3-fold in the number of contracts, both consulting and construction, close to doubling of their internal workforce within the water system. But that in itself, when you're planning out for how you're going to staff up, you also have to plan out how you're going to house your employees, train those new employees. You're going to need new warehouses. You're going to need field yards for your construction crews. So again, I see it as the logistics of putting the pieces in place so you're able to ramp up when you need to, and so that the resources are in place to meet the need as the program ramps up. And that's part of the integrated human resource planning that will need to be done for that.
Yeah, now, one of the things about it that's attractive, as was mentioned, normally you hear a lot of talk about trying to train people for jobs, and you're generally a cycle behind because you're looking at the jobs that are needed today, as opposed. This gives us the advantage of what jobs we're going to need in 10 or 20 years, and you can start working with local high schools to develop a pipeline. As you were saying earlier about people not knowing that there's a lot to do in water besides watering, plants or whatever it may be. There's a lot of very technical, very skilled, but and well-paying futures in that, particularly in the area of jobs that don't exist today.
Right.
And so a program to target that, there's nothing beats a homegrown workforce. Yeah.
So, President Katz, I'll just add that this is true for both power, water, and joint, right? And so when we look at workforce development and workforce strategic planning, if I add one operator, that adds 0.2 of a supply person, 0.1 of a mechanic. So I've asked my team to start working on an RFP for workforce strategic planning as an enterprise to look at all our needs for personnel, which will tie into fleet, facilities, and all the other components that make a thriving workforce, including workforce development and where we do that.
The DWP of the future.
You're right.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
just had a wonderful conversation yesterday with Gregory Reed, who was very kind to give me more time than I needed. And he absolutely, even though he could barely get a word in edgewise, he still was able to tell me
Wait till after Ed Raphael's
vast-
meeting and see how far.
the vast integration, and even for him personally, how it really started at high school and just factored itself onto today. And it is so important. That is the main thing I was really left with and so greatly appreciated.
So just one thing, just to finish this part of the discussion.
Yes.
When we talk about workforce development, I've had an opportunity to talk to folks at the state level, some of our cabinet secretaries, and they've expressed the same level of enthusiasm and support for working with us in Southern California to develop some kind of workforce development for the region, because they recognize that the same needs that LADWP is going to have and LA Sanitation is going to have because of our program, Metropolitan Water District is going to have the same with Pure Water SoCal. San Diego's going to have it. So one of the things they told us is that we want to partner with the city of LA and some of the other Southern California agencies to develop a program that will really be able to produce good paying quality jobs in Southern California. So it's great to have that support all the way up to the state level.
And what's also good about it is it's across the board. It's not just we all know that Hollywood needs more people to know how to do AI, but aside from that, there are going to be a lot of other jobs needed in Southern California.
Yes,
and we can direct people and help move kids young people into those. It'd be a great benefit. Fred, did I interrupt you?
No, just one last question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
How do we integrate, there are other very large projects in the water area. There's the MWD Pure Water project. There is what may or may not ever happen up north in terms of the Delta pipe or pipes or what have you. How would we change sequencing if any of these move forward faster or differently than what we're talking here? I mean, given the uncertainties in the water business, we probably ultimately need them all, but how do we schedule among these different mega projects?
But inherent sort of in your question, though, I think is the underlying beauty of the proposal, of the pure water proposal, which is what you're indicating is we can't rely on projects in other parts of the state to produce, we could bet on where the snowfall is going to be for the next 20 years, but based on the last 20, that probably won't work out real well. But the local kind of, reclaiming the water from here and the potable reuse is something that's solid, is something that, well, it was solid when it started, never mind, are things that we can use that are local and more practical to invest in some ways, maybe than counting on it coming from somewhere else.
And I think to your point, Dr. Pickle, is that's where the concept of phasing the program kind of fits in, because you built, as I mentioned, the first bucket is West Coast, Central Basin, and San Fernando Basin, and there's multiple ways you can get there. But at the end of each phase, or as you're approaching the end of each phase, you can recalibrate how are all these other programs doing? Are there other opportunities for integration? Has population decreased? Then maybe the amount of water we thought was going to be there. If it's not going to be there, or maybe with the excellent work in conservation, the demands have also gone down. So if you're able to plan this out, you want to be able to have a master plan that gives you a viable roadmap, but also gives you the flexibility that if not A, then B, and so forth, that gets you to the finish line. So I think that's where the phasing would help in us remaining nimble as we undertake this initiative.
Obviously, as many people have pointed out, this is part of a larger portfolio of water projects in the water system that are aimed at helping us meet future demands, give us flexibility in the system, but also meet our LA Green New Deal goal. So I am looking forward to a better understanding from the water system, given sort of the really long proposed timelines here, what we expect that this reintegration will do to our 2035 targets for 70% local water production, and what additional flexibility in terms of producing local water this will give us beyond those targets. I know we have a presentation scheduled coming up on that, so if we could incorporate that, I'd really appreciate it. My only other question is, how are we thinking structurally through preserving flow through the LA River while also, maintaining all of these sort of different buckets of water, as you said, and these sort of operational considerations? How are the environmental flows through the LA River being predicted, managed? How's that being considered?
Yeah. So let me touch a little bit on that. And Tracy, you may want to speak on this as well. But several years ago, the Department of Water and Power actually did a river study where we looked at what are the flows required in the river to keep a healthy ecosystem, balancing that with the need for additional recycled water. I can tell you that, for example, at Donald C. Tillman, where some of the effluent from Tillman currently goes into the LA River, as we have been developing the scope of that program, we have kept in mind that there's still a need for water to go into the river. So we don't have any plans to dry out the LA River. We understand that there is a responsibility to have a balanced approach. When it comes to Hyperion, obviously, this is at the end of the system, not necessarily at the beginning, kind of where Tillman is, as well as LA Glendale is as well. But Tracy, please, you can jump into
Exactly, Anselmo. So there are studies that are being done on the Los Angeles River and the amount of flow that's needed to maintain all of the beneficial reuses, so the habitat and the recreational uses. And there's been a first level model that has been completed. The State Water Resources Control Board has been very much involved. And now there's a second tier that's being looked at right now to refine that model and take a closer look. So we're still looking at what is needed to be maintained in the Los Angeles River to protect it, and that has to definitely be factored into how much water we have available for water recycling, and very much a component of what's going on at the Tillman Water Reclamation Plant.
And just, when you talk about 20 MGD out of Donald C. Tillman plant, and you see that LA River, discharges to LA River in the range of mid-20s, you think, well, it's going to take all the water. But that's not actually the case. They're doing diversions to move more sewage there, and they're also building equalization storage to grab the diurnal during the day. That'll alleviate that, because
pump it out and balance it at night.
So that the rest of that would go to Hyperion, and that was part of our analysis in terms of the amount of water for Hyperion. If additional 20 MGD is going to be developed out of DCT, well, then that has a downstream effect at Hyperion, and then that water may not be available for recycling back then, which is okay, because you're higher up in the system where you need the water anyway.
And if the city can effectively partner with the Army Corps on sort of redoing our approach to the river, for instance, we'll have to do those calculations over again, I presume.
For the flow, flow, right? Working with engineering, yes, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and there is a presentation on the LA River coming up.
And I'm teeing it up for him.
We're about to use this as a transition to that.
Perfect
just
timing.
point out that the flow into the LA River north of downtown comes from there are a whole group of cities that have their own reductions they have to meet that have to be taken into account as well. But let's use this as a way to segue.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
It was really wonderful to have you present together.
Time.
We really appreciate the work that went into that.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. How about a presentation on the LA River ecosystem? Just happen to have one here today. So.
We are taught to be water resilient, which means we found the right PowerPoint.
All right.
Perfect segue. We touched on Tillman. We touched on the river. We talked about ocean discharges. What's the most efficient way of doing it? So perfect tee up for LA River topics. Certainly in light of today's agenda, we appreciate the time today. There's so much I can say to start, but before doing so, just wanted to say thank you for the time. We have a really brief report to talk about the LA River project. My name is Jesus Gonzalez, manager of DWP's Groundwater and Recycled Water Policy Group. But more importantly, are joining me two special guests, Mr. Jeff Thompson, Director of Capital Facilities for Mayor Bass, and Edward Belden, who has a very easy job of implementing this multi-billion-dollar project on behalf of the city's LABOE. Before we get started, just want to emphasize that this is a very brief report to highlight three specific topics. First, we wanted to brief the board on providing you an overview of the LA River Ecosystem Restoration Project, which is a component of the entire LA River Master Plan. Secondly, Jeff is going to touch on some of the progress that the city's made with regard to advancing this project forward at a state and federal level. And lastly, I just wanted to emphasize that DWP remains committed to collaborating with the city as they embark and advance this project forward. So before I turn it over to Jeff and Edward, because they're certainly going to steal the show, just want to emphasize that the LA River project is one of the largest infrastructure projects in the entire country. And some would say it's one of the largest ecosystem restoration projects in the entire world. So it is being followed, again, not just at a state and national level, but across the world because of the long-term impacts it will have to the LA River as a model for not just LA, but for the rest of the globe. That being said, also want to underscore that the city is on the cusp of making some major progress with regard to just federal funding opportunities with progress. And so you've asked in the past, whenever the city is embarking on major initiatives, you wanted to be informed and made aware of anything that could impact DWP. So we wanted to also touch on that today. So without further ado, just wanted to turn it over to Jeff, who again is Director of Capital Facilities for Mayor Bass, to talk about some of the steps the city's taking to advance the project forward.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners and executive team. My name is Jeff Thompson. I'm working for Mayor Bass. Just wanted to underscore the importance of this project and give you all some perspective about where in the region the Los Angeles Ecosystem Restoration Project touches. We're really talking about the heart of the LA River, right at the curve near the Los Angeles Zoo. And so this, fundamentally, the goals of this project are to restore 11 miles of existing, largely concrete channel in that area. So that at the culmination of this project, we're talking about nearly 720 new acres of new habitat to, to address longstanding environmental justice and park access issues, to address community equity, social and economic health, to most importantly, I think, restore habitat and biodiversity in our unique chaparral climate here in Southern California, and to provide climate resilience and public health opportunities for enhanced green space. This project is very long-standing. It was initiated over 20 years ago. The complexities of this project are many, and we in the Bass administration are carrying the work forward from not only our Mayor Garcetti, but Mayor Zaragoza and others to really advance this work and hopefully make some very meaningful progress on it in the next couple of years. Integral to that partnership is our work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as the federal sponsor of this project. This is a hybrid development model for projects, meaning that there will be portions of this project that are delivered and developed by the City of LA and portions that are done by the Army Corps in a series of 8 reaches along this stretch. This project also crosses 4 council offices, starting with Councilmember Rahman's district and then passing down into Hugo Soto Martinez's district, as well as Eunice Hernandez and Kevin De Leon at the end, just before downtown. There are, as I mentioned, cost-sharing agreements. This is a project that has had some cost escalations in these past few years. And so although this project was previously authorized in 2016 by the Water Resources Development Act at the time, U.S. Army Corps has asked us to reauthorize the project in the current version of the Water Resources Development Act, which is under consideration by the U.S. Congress for this year. Next slide. So just some details about the actual project and where we stand. Taylor Yard is probably the most famous portion of this project that you've heard covered in the news. The city has done a lot of work, including Edward and others in the Bureau of Engineering, to acquire land at Taylor Yard to do that very important restoration along a portion of the city of LA that has had some very long-standing environmental degradation issues. Taylor Yard itself was once a rail yard with very heavy industrial uses. And this is also in the area commonly known as Cypress Park, so historically disadvantaged area. So the investment strategy has been very deliberate in the work with the state and really enhancing access to green space in that area. I also want to draw your attention to Pollywog Park, which is at the very top of the slide. It's very close to the city of Burbank. It is Rec and Park's land that is encumbered or has basically the 134 on the southern side and then the city of Burbank on the northern portion. And then just to the left of that, there's a very important DWP project happening there with the Tom LaBonge Headworks program and the work that's going to be made and the investments that are going to be made in that site in the next 5 to 10 years. Out of all of these reaches, Taylor Yard and Pollywog are the most advanced and are nearly ready to are either in the process of being delivered or are near ready to be constructed. In particular, Pollywog Park has about $29 million that was allocated for that ecosystem restoration project. You'll see that these are also color-coded. I mentioned earlier that this is a hybrid development or delivery model. The pink is delivered by our partners in the Army Corps, and the blue is the city of LA.
How much of the 4.5 is funded?
So this currently the $4.5 billion, we and the city of LA for any capital project, doesn't matter what we're talking about, we can't usually encumber funds beyond any given year. We've already invested over 100 million in this project.
Environmentally, right.
And we have an investment plan with a timeline on when we'll need to do those additional investments.
We have to get it, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
the initial work at Reach 6 there is already funded, so that can continue to move forward with the sale of the real.
And like any major capital project in the city of LA, it's usually a mix of funds with a very low drawdown on general funds. It's usually a mix of state grants, federal grants, et cetera.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there any pollywogs left in the world?
There actually are quite a few in the Glendale Narrows, yes.
So you can see some of the timeline around this and basically just underscoring what I mentioned in the last slide, which is Reach 1, which is at the very top, is kind of at the most advanced phase, along with Reach 6, which is also known as Taylor Yard.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are our next steps here from the city of LA? We're really trying to carry the work forward of prior administrations. And we've had, as you know, a number of changes in the city council as well, new council members. So it's really reestablishing those relationships with our federal partners, showing our partners unequivocally that this is a priority for the city of Los Angeles, and responding to some of their concerns that they brought up with us back in the fall, which is the city of LA is a bit of a hydra and can be a challenge to work with due to the governance and the amount of boards and how many people get involved in various projects. And
very judiciously put out. Very nicely done. You know?
And he comes from the city.
So what does that mean for us in the mayor's office? That means corralling all the right partners. And I really do want to underscore how helpful Jesus has been in bringing you all into the fold on where we are with this project. Edward's work and others, Deborah Weintraub, who's deputy city engineer, has been working on this project for so many years. We're really carrying this work forward and making the governance a little bit less of a challenge for our Army Corps partners. Army Corps itself is a good partner, but also has their own governance challenges, of course. So delivering major projects throughout the West Coast, and the rest of the country. And so we've really taken the opportunity to not only come to you and the board, we briefed the RAP Commission earlier this year and got a ringing endorsement from them as well. And so we're really at a pivotal phase to not only making sure that this project is included in the current version of WRDA that's before the House and the Senate, but that also our city council partners are engaged once the project partnership agreement for the project moves forward, which we expect to happen hopefully in the fall. So just a reminder to those council members, there's some newer ones and older ones in that mix, but getting their buy-in on what this project means for them and for their communities.
So to build on what Jeff said, I think he's trying to say that we've become best friends over the past several months because the project really is at an inflection point. There's progress being made on some reaches. There's funding that the city's on the verge of receiving that's going to propel this project forward faster. And so it's important for us, meaning DWP, with so much infrastructure being potentially impacted by the project, to be tied at the hip with all that the city's doing as far as design, future projects, impacts to our infrastructure, both water and power. There's a lot of real estate assets that DWP owns and controls alongside the river. We're mindful of that. And lastly, our water rights. So there's been a lot of discussion today on water issues pertaining to the river. A lot of the projects and a lot of some of the renderings that you see contain water features. So there will be a need for water supply as the city tries to balance the development of new water supplies and benefits to the environment. We want to be mindful of what it means to us at Tillman, at Hyperion, our water rights that DWP owns and controls along the LA River, and to work with the city in a collaborative way. So all we're saying here is that as the city embarks and advances forward, DWP is committed to collaborate with Jeff and team on all aspects of the project, both with federal negotiations and again, even at a technical level on the engineering side. So last point I just wanted to make is as we work as a team, we also want to make sure that we are respectful and report regularly to this board and keep you updated, not just on progress, but any milestones, which Jeff touched on today. We want to bring those to your attention in advance so you have a sense of what's happening, not just at DWP, but again, at the city level. So that concludes our very brief presentation. I do want to again thank you for the time given today's lengthy agenda, but we can open it up for questions now.
I appreciate that, and appreciate your patience today. But it did fit together relatively well. Right. You know, almost like we designed it that way. But that's our story.
And we're sticking to it.
It does raise. I mean, it's somehow appropriate that everything in the future of LA surprisingly depends on water and how we use our resources. So that has not changed. hopefully our approaches to it are changing and will improve as we all get smarter about it. Questions, folks, or comments?
I have comment/question, and that's, you didn't bring up UP or the rail
Right.
partners, which are really important. And I don't know if you know, but I actually operate out of a river-adjacent project, but it's, site, which is 6 sets of rails away from the edge. So, and there's a lot of properties they're not using effectively, as you know, that's Taylor Yard, among one of them. So I'm curious if there's conversations with them about, their sort of their planning, of whether it's effective for them to stay where they are, or at some point, narrow down and move east, obviously. So, that's a question. And the other question is associated with there's a lot of the, especially obviously electric utilities that DWP manages, owns, and needs, and it is sort of effectively a problem to deliver those parks in the way they're being portrayed. So undergrounding some of those power lines might be something that needs to be taken into consideration. So you're not always under wires when you're trying to, and one of those projects is, of course, the plant in Glendale. It's like, how do you connect that to the river, in a sense?
So regarding Piggyback Yard or the Union Pacific LATC, it's the last piece to be addressed. It's going to take a long time to negotiate that acquisition, relocation. It does represent about 65% of the whole cost of the whole project right now. So it's substantial.
Just buying the land?
Not just buying land, but the whole thing on that one whole reach.
Okay.
So, but the land is still the highest portion of that project and the highest portion of Reach 8. So there's been negotiations in the past. There'd have to be some future negotiations. And I think we're also hoping that at some point the opportunity aligns, right?
Yes.
Where Union Pacific's uses align with an opportunity to transform that landscape.
Of course.
Yeah. And then in terms of overhead lines, your transmission lines, we know they're critically important. I think everybody's interested in working together to see what opportunities there are there to allow additional uses underneath the lines versus opportunities to realign if that looks like it's operationally feasible, right? But I don't think it's something we want to find ways to move this project forward, to work in collaboration with LGDP and find ways we can build parks that benefit the community, habitat benefits the community, at the same time making sure that we know that the power and the water that's provided benefits the community, right?
Of course. And then the other is, in the last few months, there was, now with the internet, of course, we get a lot of communications. I don't know, there's somebody in the audience that isn't speaking today, so I'm just gonna, which is that the Army Corps had dictated for a lot of the vegetation in the soft bottom to be removed.
In the existing channel.
Right. Soft bottom.
Right. There is some current vegetation management plan that the Corps has already put forward. There's opportunities to probably go and reach out to them more, but it has a range right now of from 100% removal to about 50% removal. And right now I think they're funded to about remove maybe 10% of that, what's in there right now. But what I've heard from them is they're looking at removing mostly the sediment and then limited areas where it's vegetation that will actually be removed, and then leaving most of the willows, essentially, and the trees that are currently in there.
Okay. I know a
And mostly
person,
invasive
I know
weeds.
a person who once changed himself to that area, who would be chaining himself now. But anyway, he's not with us. So, thank you, Lewis McAdams, for actually, but it is palpable. I don't know to what degree they're like really informing you when they're removing. For those of us who frequent that area, it's like, it's palpable that there's much less vegetation. And there were a lot of sycamores and willows, but thank you for the.
Sure. Yeah, I would say also, just to add on to that, longer-term operations and maintenance is something that we will be addressing. So Rec and Parks has expressed interest in building out their skill set in a way that they don't do wetlands management currently.
No.
And so we are going to have to build out the skill set in the city and the funding to make sure that it does get properly maintained. As we all know, in California is the magic of just adding water. Everything grows here,
Yes.
for better and for worse. So a lot of invasives come in and need to be removed on a regular basis. We've seen this in other portions of the LA River as well, farther upstream and downstream. So we really are going to have to get that right longer term and have a partnership with our city partners to make sure O&M is happening in the right way, in a thoughtful way, in a way that's hopefully not too disruptive to the nature that we're supposed to be serving in this project.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else?
I'll just add, the balance of what the use of the LA River was designed at the origins versus where we're going in, that this is a very challenging project because the use of the LA River is to avoid floods and move water out of the city, right? And so it still has to have that use while greening the area, which I think goes to the discussion we've been having on workforce development and equity, and it all ties together. But it's the way I'm seeing the projects coming in through DWP and the city are comprehensive, multi-community benefit projects, and it's really challenging us to think outside of the box and think bigger than just running power lines and or water lines. It's how do we integrate as a community partner to ensure that LA thrives in all aspects of life.
Yes.
I just want to thank Jesus and his leadership and the way he worked with Jeff and bringing all the departments, and also this is a complex project, but this clarity that we have right now, that's going to make us more successful as we move forward. So thanks for your leadership and appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you indeed.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to say thank you briefly, though, to the board in general, because you have all supported this project from early on with even $2 million towards the feasibility report. So you've been thinking ahead and really already achieving some of the goals that you're still working towards. So thank you so much for that.
Appreciate that. Sounds like someone who's going to be looking for additional funds in the future. But very well done, though. No, and we appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. I don't know what to say. No, I appreciate everybody and everyone's patience today. It's been a long day, but I think it's been a fascinating meeting. So I want to thank everybody. Ben, we have one thing we have to do in closed session.
I thought we were going to defer. I thought you wanted to defer.
Okay, I
everything.
thought
That's totally fine.
Okay, I'm happy to defer it at this point.
Not a problem.
All right, so we'll defer closed session to the next 2 weeks, and in that case, we're done.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Hey, Ben.